Is that why you're joined twice there, Ted?
What's that?
Is that why you're on twice? Is one of those Jake?
Yeah, one's the one that's connected to Jake's to the broadcast, and the other one is me at home. I just, instead of sitting up there and doing nothing, I might as well hold a baby if I can, help my wife out.
You want to rename the one that's Jake so it's not confusing to people? Can you do that as an administrator from home?
Yeah, I think I can. I kind of plan to not share my, I don't know if I need, my face needs to be up there, so, but I wasn't going to share that one with just a flag either. But.
I just got notice that says it's live.
Okay. All right, are we all here? Do we have everybody? Mr. Jeff Elsaw. Oh, looks like he's coming up. And John Welch is coming up.
Howdy, Chief.
How you doing?
Hello. I told Carl Link that this started at 7, and I am in error. So I'm trying to find his phone number so I can give him a ring.
Mr. Welch, are you on?
Not really.
I don't see your picture, but I see JW on the screen, so.
Yeah, I can't get the camera to work. I was in a different room a while ago, and everything dropped off. My network's slow for some reason.
I hate it when that happens.
Somebody's watching a movie or something down the block. Probably those Benages.
Yeah. Stealing all the bandwidth from everybody else, right?
Yeah.
I think we have a quorum here, so I think everybody's here, so probably should get started. We got maybe a long meeting. We'll see how it goes. The first thing on the agenda is the emergency operations plan. Our chief of police has done a job working on this, and I don't know how long on this, but I know it's been a while. I know I asked about it probably in October of 2018, and I know it's been in work since then. So anyway, he had presented it to us. We've all had an opportunity to review it, I think, and I did send him a bit of some comments back here last night. So anyway. So I'll let you take the floor, Mr. Chief Atterbury, and you can walk us through how this thing all works together. If you would, please. You are on mute, by the way. Maybe that's intentional.
Okay, and now I'm done. There's a lot of trees that get killed with this thing. But the initial part is the all crisis plan. So we can make this work with anything that happens. Like I said, there are 15 different areas. If you have any specific questions, please let me know, because I don't think you want me to go through this whole thing essential function after essential function. So if there's specific questions I can answer, jump right in. So the plan itself, and yes, you're right, Mr. Mayor, been working on it for quite a while. Part of the problem is, previous to Carl Link, the emergency management director now, we received different directions from each person who was in that position. One was just a basic framework, and they told us to start from scratch and create one. Then it evolved to a situation, and you saw some of that as you reviewed the plan. We were provided with emergency operations plans from Sedgwick County, Wichita, Cheney, and Valley Center. So we cobbled those together. Those cities that are similar in size, the Valley Center and the Cheney primarily, and tried to use those instead of reinventing the wheel. And you can see in your documents that some of those names were still in there. They have all been corrected. That's one of the things that Mr. Welsh and the mayor pointed out, and I was happy to go through and get those things corrected. The plan itself, after you review it and decide to move forward with it, there's a document here, a letter of promulgation, that just says that we've adopted this and the county is going to put this into their plan. And basically what it does is it helps them know that we're on board with a plan in case there is an emergency in Sedgwick County, specifically Bel Aire. All cities are supposed to have something like this in place. Not all of them do. We do. And so as far as that goes, we're in the game. So primarily there are some goals: prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery. Those mission areas are critical to the plan, and that's what this plan works to work through with the different sections. You know, the transportation, communication, public works, engineering, and the like. The capabilities of our city are different than every other city. For instance, we have no responsibilities insofar as fire protection, because that falls to the Sedgwick County Fire District number 1. And I will go through them briefly, but not in depth. But let's start with transportation. You know, those are things that are going to be important to us. Our roadways, are we going to be able to... sorry, my radio is turned up. You know, when there's damage to our transportation system, our roadways, are we going to be able to get debris off the roadways, get those cleared so other emergency services can come in and assist us, that type of thing. You know, are there any agreements that we have to have? And that's something after we adopt, we can work towards if we need to. The communications area. The old plan relied a lot on hardline communications. We do a lot of wireless now. And in the event of an emergency, especially Cox and Verizon will move in with their mobile services to assist us with communications. So, and that's part of the plan. That's in the essential services plan. Public works. You know, we have to look at our infrastructure. Is there damage that needs to be repaired? Emergency repairs. Are we going to have to reestablish our infrastructure so that we can continue our operations. So that's part of that. The firefighting, I've already mentioned. Information and planning. This is planning, and that's what part of this is for that crisis event, for any emergency that might take place. And we're talking about the pandemic, the derailing of a train, a plane crash, you name it. That's why this is an all hazards plan instead of an every hazards plan. If there is a situation that takes place, what are we going to do with mass care, casualties, emergency assistance, disaster housing, human services? While this is in here, if it's that big, we have the county to assist us. I was on the phone earlier today with Mr. Link, and he said that just about anything that happens, they are going to be right at our side to assist us. We remain in control of our city, but they are there to provide resources to us to help us through whatever we encounter. Logistics, that's planning, management, sustaining capabilities, resource support. That's something that falls to finance and administration. The public health and medical services, that's primarily Sedgwick County, again, kind of like the firefighting. The surge. Mr. Welsh.
Yeah. I know it's my fault. Give me a minute.
You need to speaker, John. Folks.
Mr. Welsh. Click on your microphone.
Are you on the phone as well as your speaker? Or on the computer? Microphone? We're getting feedback off the bat. Something needs to be muted.
Okay. So,
Yeah, just hang on till I say I'm okay.
Mr. Welsh, if you can click on your microphone up on your screen, it'll mute it.
No, that's not the problem.
There you go. You got it.
Okay. Then search and rescue. This is, again, with Sedgwick County Fire. They'd be responsible for that initial response and the search and rescue of injured. They can do both the collapse rescues and the waterborne searches and open land searches. So they've got capabilities for all those things. So it doesn't really fall to us as much as it does to them. And since they're right at our side, we're working in partnership with them. The same is true for oil and hazardous materials response. We don't have the capabilities for that, but Sedgwick County Fire District Number 1 does. And they're going to do the environmental assessments and the control of the contamination and help with decontamination and cleanup. The agricultural and natural resources, I've got that down as Bel Aire administration. And this is kind of a post-event area that works with nutrition assistance, animal and agricultural issues, those things that we need for getting back on our feet and getting down the road. The energy, that is our infrastructure as far as electricity, light poles, the delivery of that energy to our facilities. There was a question earlier today about whether we would be responsible for the private businesses in our city? And that answer is no. They would need to be responsible for themselves. We will look to take care of city services so that we can deliver those services to our constituents. Public safety and security, that would be the Bel Aire Police Department. We're going to look at security for the building, if it's still standing. Okay, that was a joke. We block roads and we secure facilities. For instance, if there was a need to deliver a mass prophylactic drug to our citizens, we have a staging point here, and we would provide security for that in that situation. We also have external and external affairs, and that's going to be working with the Joint Information Center, which would be downtown, and the intergovernmental affairs. We would do private sector outreach, reaching out to our businesses to see what they need. And it's kind of a communications, PR, PIO type of situation with that. And then external communications, how we're going to deliver our message to the people. How we're going to let them know that we have an emergency, that there's been a declaration of an emergency, and what to do next. And that might be what roads to take, where to take debris, where to take your concerns about getting back on their feet, boil orders in case we have a contaminated water supply, that type of thing. So that, in a nutshell, is the plan. And again, if you have any questions, hop right in. So pardon me for just a moment. So as I said, this is not a plan that covers every instance and every crisis that we might see, but is based on the incident command system and the national framework as to how to handle emergencies when they do occur. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so if you have questions, please, like we've done with the city council meetings, type in talk so that we know that you would like to speak because of the delay we have with this go-to-meeting issue, and we will let you speak in the order that we show up. I do have one question. Is this a new chief, or has this been one that we're updating from a previous version? I'm not familiar with the previous version, but I don't know that.
Well, the previous version was considerably smaller than this, and it didn't actually work with the same format. These emergency support functions, those areas that I just went through, this is a different way of looking at how to handle crises. So that plan to this plan is different.
So it's pretty much a rewrite of the whole plan. Okay, that's fine. That's good to know. Okay. Dr. Schroeder, would you like to say something or a question?
Yeah, my understanding of this is a heroic effort to try to think of anything that really bad could happen and have a basic idea, which, of course, the details will have to be filled in later because we can't possibly predict all the potential problems. And if my summary is pretty much right, I don't really have any other questions beyond that, and I thank you for all your work on it.
Thank you. There is one thing to all of you, at least as I point out, elected officials, and that is some training that you need to take here in the near future. Now, I was going to get that out to you. I was praying that we could get that done online, but some of these classes, it's called a G1 402, and that's a basic class for elected officials having to do with something exactly like this. What your role is when a crisis hits. So when those classes start back up again, I will let you know when they are so that we can try to plan to get you in so that you can get through that class. And right now, I don't know whether it's a 4-hour or an 8-hour. I think they've got both, but it might just be the longer one. So I'll let you know when that happens.
That'll be very helpful. One additional question I had related to training is, do we need to run our own city staff through training related to this, and what would be the plan for that?
Well, they wouldn't go through the same exact training that you would go through. There are some classes that they might be able to take. I don't know how useful it would be for them to spend time taking it, because their role would be the same as what it is now, just working under a crisis situation.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, Mr. Link, I did communicate with him early today, and I erred in communicating to him that this started at 7. So he might be here in about 10 minutes.
Okay. Mr. Smith, would you like to say a question?
I think I was just going to ask, most of the processes that are outlined in this document identify certain departments as responsible for different functions. For example, administration is responsible for this item, and public works is responsible for that item. How is this plan going to be distributed in City Hall, and how are we going to make sure it's readily available for those departments should an emergency arise? That may have been the spirit of the previous question, just said a little bit differently.
Okay, fair. First, it needs to be adopted. And then it can be put out to the different areas of the cities. For instance, finance has a huge responsibility in this. I've worked on several tornadoes, ice storms, different events that have occurred. And one of the biggest things is keeping just what we're doing right now with COVID, and that is keeping track of every penny we spend so that later on we can have a reimbursement from the federal government or the state. That's any crisis that we have to do the same thing, so that if we're allowed to tap into funds of the state or the federal government, we have everything that we have on the front end instead of having to go back and try to collect that data later on. So that's just an example. The contracts that might have to be in place for generators or porta potties or whatever we would need in an emergency, that would be administration. So we could work some of those agreements out with Waste Management or whoever to have those services guaranteed in case we have an emergency. And you're right, they go to functional areas. So after this is adopted, we can get that out to those functional areas and people can review those. The other thing is, and the mayor hit on it a little bit ago, and that is that each year we probably need to review this and update it because things do change. The old plan mentioned some technology that's no longer in use. And as technology changes, we have to adapt to that technology. And for instance, you can hold meetings now online. The old plan said that you had to come and sit around the table in a meeting room to make decisions. So things, just small things like that, we can tweak in the plan, and so that you can make decisions.
Very good, thank you.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Smith? Okay.
Mr. Welsh?
Okay, you said the council needs to approve this. Wouldn't it be smarter to, well, now that you've amended the document, to run it past the department heads that are responsible for each section and let them proofread it before we get a copy and then we read it and adopt it?
However you would like to handle that as a council.
Well, I don't want to be doing the proofreading, and I don't want to be speaking for department heads if it's not something they think is appropriate for them to be doing.
Well, it's not really an optional thing. Most of this, this is the plan, and it's tailored after the county's plan. It's based on the incident command system and the national framework. There's not a lot of jockeying around with items in the plan. There were a few things that Mr. Benage pointed out and you pointed out that were tweaks that needed to be done to it. But for instance, on the CCUA issues with our water delivery and our stormwater, that type of thing, those have already been corrected by the department head.
Okay, I'm not sure it's not whether they want to do it or not, it's just whether it's appropriate for them to be doing what they're doing. I know there's lots of jobs where you do things you don't want to, but you need to admit that that's something your department's responsible for and just back up to it.
Yeah, whatever you decide as a council, if you want each one to read it and then come back and revisit it, that's your option.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Smith, I think you were up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, so I looked through this plan. I thought the plan seemed very thorough. It looked great. I noticed a few typos in it as I was reading through, but it sounds like those have already likely been addressed, and so I'm not going to point those out here. I was thinking, though, I don't have any expertise on emergency management or drafting these types of plans. I don't know that anyone on our council has that expertise either, and so outside of the staff expertise, we're reviewing it, and it can look good to us, but that doesn't necessarily mean it covers all of the areas it needs to cover, or that it includes all of the details it needs to include, or that it's even a good plan. And so I don't know, are there folks that specialize in this that we should be consulting to make sure that we have a good plan and that we haven't missed things? It seems like good emergency planning is really important, and we need to make sure that we have good plans for if emergencies should hit. And so I guess I was just curious on maybe the chief's perspective or the city manager's perspective on if we feel that we have sufficient expertise internally to make sure that that is constructed excellently, or if we need to consider other alternatives for outside consulting or professional engagement to make sure that we've got good and thorough plans here.
The emergency manager offered up one of his staff members to review it if we wanted that, so that's available to us. And that would be the same person who has reviewed each city's plan. So that is that expertise that you were talking about.
Good, thank you. Ms. Nguyen, you were on unmute for a second. Were you wanting to ask a question? I don't know if you have the ability to do chat yet.
Actually, I lost my picture, so, I can't see you guys now. And I just reached for the keyboard, so trying to get back with the rest of you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lasher.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Diane, we could see and hear you, so it must be on your end about seeing us. But as the chief said in response to Mr. Smith, This is a situation where it's the county and the state have emergency divisions that write these and handle these, so that's why the chief kind of relied on them. And so there's really no need for us to hire anybody because that's what their expertise is. So if council, from what I'm hearing, if council's okay with this, what if you have any other concerns? I know Mr. Welch and Mayor Benaj have sent those to the chief. If any of you have anything else that you've noticed, please get that to the chief. And then what he can do is make those updates, send out the specific sections that deal with our departments, have them review them, mainly, as the chief said, not for, well, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that. It's not a question of, it's really what they have to do. But if they can catch any, or have any questions for the chief about their responsibilities or any typos or anything like that, and then we can get that back together, have the emergency management person review it, and then maybe have it on your first meeting in June to adopt. If you're comfortable with that, we can move in that direction.
I think that sounds like a very good plan. What I would like to add on to that plan is I'm kind of big on training. I think that it's great for the department heads to review it and say, yeah, that worked for us, or if you make this little tweak, makes it a little better. But I think that the people in the department, each department should have exposure and training to what their expectations are. And I understand it may be their job already, but at least they know, then that's what it's there. I see this when I audit companies. One of the big things I always look at is what's your organizational knowledge, what's your competence, what's your training. Those are big issues to me when I do audits, and so that's I think it's important that our organization does the same thing if we can. So I appreciate that. I don't know what the extent of that training would be. It may be no more than doing the document, but at least they have exposure to the document.
I would, Mr. Mayor, if we're going to have everybody read the document, my preference is to have the employees go through the training that you were speaking of prior to reading the documents, because there's no context for them without the training. So that training would probably be beneficial before reading the document.
That would be a great plan. I think that's a good way to go about it. So I'm okay with all that. I don't know, council members, you got anything to chime in about that? I understand Mr. Link has joined the meeting. Good evening, Mr. Link. Happy to finally meet you. So if we have any questions for Mr. Link, he is on the call as well.
Carl, you're muted.
Yeah, you are muted.
You're still muted, Carl. There you go.
All right, I should be good to go now. I was trying to figure out where to click on this thing. It's the first time I've used this particular program. Good evening, Mayor. Sorry I'm a minute or so late trying to figure out getting this thing downloaded and everything on the computer here.
Carl, I just want to let you know that I told you it was at 7. It started a little earlier, so that's not on you. It's on me.
All right, I got your note just as I was trying to download the program. Sorry about that.
So do we have any, Mr. Link is the Sedgwick County Emergency Manager. He would be our partner in this if we ever have to implement this. And
yes, absolutely.
So anyway, if you do have any questions for Mr. Link, now is an opportunity to talk with him.
Mr. Link, can you, I did a poor job of it, but could you explain how our local plans dovetail with the county's plan and the state plans, and how we work in partnership in case there is an emergency?
Yes, Chief, and I'll back up just a little bit. So how we got to where we're at today basically is emergency management went out and asked, we started about 2 years ago looking at, this year is our county level plan is due to the state for state approval. And we're in the process of building that right now. Rather than kind of be the Jedi Knight planners that we could be, disaster management begins at the closest and the lowest possible level. So, you know, I literally can't tell other communities how to do disaster planning at the county level when that responsibility really lies on the local government officials. So we asked Daryl and all the other chiefs out there basically to kind of think about if something happened in their own community, how would we help them manage that disaster? Rather than the county just saying, this is how we're going to do it for you. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So the concept is your local plan will be nested in the county overall plan. And of course, our plan should be nested in with the state level plan. So everybody's working together. We're not telling somebody else how to try to do business in their own backyard. We are literally reinforcing what you've already established and knowing that nobody has the crystal ball to be able to explain every possible variable that could be out there in a disaster. It's the concept is that we basically have a few of the things already identified and we apply that local plan then on whatever the exact circumstances are to the incident at hand. And hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So that's where we're kind of starting right now. And Daryl's one of the first to get this stuff together. And the idea is we're going to nest that little plan that you have for Bel Aire into the overarching county plan, which is of course then nested in with the state level plan.
You saying we're ahead of everybody else on this?
Yes, I think we're by far ahead of where we were. And hopefully, I mean, it's, my military background is, you know, you basically can't plan for everything. But the idea is you start with a plan, and then when the incident unfolds in front of you, then you have to respond to that incident. But the idea of starting out with just the county having a plan, as you know, Mayor, you know, all disasters are local, and the concept would be that we are in support of what you're already planning for, if that makes sense. I can't tell you where you're going to have a community level casualty collection point. I can't tell you really how you plan on doing a community level shelter for your community. I can tell you how the county might do it, if that makes sense. We're starting to hopefully put some of that in place. And this is round one. Again, we'll be going through it basically every year, and every time we do another community level exercise, we'll be able to apply some of those lessons learned and update those other plans that are out there. But the concept is not to be starting from scratch in a real incident. And, you know, obviously nobody could have kind of prepared for the COVID-19 stuff that we're responding to right now. But again, the idea is to basically start with something.
Very good. I appreciate that. So do we have any more questions for Mr. Lake or Mr. Perry? Do you have something you wanted to say, ask?
Yeah, I guess this is a question to the chief and Mr. Lincoln. Could you speak to the issue of protecting the rights of citizens during emergency management? You know, we've seen a little bit of things pop up, not in our local area, but in other places around the country, situations where potentially law enforcement or agents of the government, whether they be local, county, or even state level, are potentially violating United States constitutional and perhaps state constitutional rights. What sort of measures or protections exist either in the document itself or in the plan, or does it speak to that in any way? Can you speak to that?
Not to that level of detail, but the best way to explain that is that's all has to be gauged at the local level based on the local, what's a good way of putting it, kind of the community morals, if you will. I know in most of the meetings that I've attended, and I can't think of any single one where any chief of police or any law enforcement entity is going to basically say that they were, at least in Kansas, I'm not talking national level, but in Kansas, that have said that we have the resources to be able to do some of what you've seen across the country. You how you enforce like an internal store masking rule. Well, that's up to the store, and if the store is going to make that kind of rule, then they ought to get with the local chief of police, and ask, okay, how would we do this? Under the morals of our community, how do we best get after this? Nobody wants to completely ignore any, let's say, a governor's level order, but the problem is we just don't have what's the result? Are you going to, how many people are you going to put in jail before the jail is already overcrowded? Well, hold on a second. Chief, I think you already know the answer to that one. I mean, we're pretty much already there. So arresting somebody for not wearing a mask in a store or something like that is just not feasible. And if it comes back to me as a question, that's the recommendation that I'm going to make to leadership, because I don't see where not wearing a mask in a store is going to be an enforceable offense. Although it is technically criminally, you can do it. Is it the right thing to do by, like you're asking, for the Constitution and the morals of the community? And I think that has to be answered or gauged at the local level. So I'm not trying to throw that back as a question for the mayor, but I would ask then the mayor and the chief then, okay, what would you think that your elected community or citizens out there would stand for? Is that what they want to see? And it could be a 51% answer. You could say 51% of the community would support that kind of activity based on the specifics of what this, let's use COVID-19, has done in your community. I'm gauging this across the country, and I see, let's use Kansas, for example, right now. What is it? About 85% of the counties have at least a case. So how would I gauge and how would I enforce something that's affecting 85% of the counties in Kansas when it's not affecting another county? And that's what I think at the state level you're seeing right now is how does the leadership best gauge against what's not impacting every single county that's out there. So Bel Aire, the city of Bel Aire may not be impacted the same as another community in the county. So that's even hard for the county officials, I think, to see. But if you're asking a specific medical type question as to whether we should be doing something like a masking type policy, that's really a health department question, because they're the incident commander in this particular case. But hopefully that's added a little bit to the thought process on there. I just don't see how we have an answer for the entire country, if that makes sense.
If I can chime in for just a moment, this COVID situation we're in now is different. The majority of all the emergency situations, crisis situations I've dealt with have been, like I said, the ice storms and the tornadoes that have gone through Wichita. And in those situations, we did confine some rights of people to freely flow through the community, but it was in areas that had been hard hit. For instance, with a tornado just north of Hayesville, with the Hayesville tornado, there were neighborhoods in Wichita that were leveled. So we put up a perimeter around those neighborhoods, and we checked everybody who was going in so that we could know that they belonged there. We checked IDs, and at night, we enforced a curfew for the whole area. Well, that infringes on some people's rights, but it's best for that situation so that we can protect Mr. Elshoff. If it was your house and property that had been leveled and you still had things laying around in the yard, and that happens, you don't want anybody coming in and removing your property. So we do that type of activity so that we can protect the area and protect the people and protect their property from people who would come in and steal that property. So there are things that we put in place with different types of events, and some restrict travel to some degree. Some things like this COVID-19 and the masking and things, that's totally off the charts, I think, for Mr. Link and I. I've never dealt with anything like this. But I can tell you that every Wednesday, the sheriff, we have a meeting just like this with all the law enforcement heads in the county. And there is nobody who wants to go and enforce a masking violation or a business opening up when they shouldn't be. Our position, and across the board, our position is go and talk. Try to let them know why it's being done. Use empathy and let them know that we would rather that they comply than not comply.
Okay,
Well,
thank
I
you.
agree with you, Chief, and I think the important part there is the way you respond to cordoning off an area like during a tornado is obviously not the same type of, where you have a defined area, you have a defined purpose. Your law enforcement actions are going to be a little bit different. They're protecting property than trying to enforce like a private rule at a local business or something like that. Now, if it's a state order, again, there's other legal ramifications, and I believe it's a misdemeanor to disregard like the governor's orders. However, do you have the means to address every single one of those cases across the entire community, law enforcement wise? And do you have the resources as far as jail space? If you're going to start with one, where does it end? So I think when I say the morals of the community, I really think it has to basically go back down to that level. And we collectively have to ask ourselves, what is right? What does right look like in our community? And of course, I would be looking at it with you, and we would be making recommendations to the county commissioners. They're technically the policy folks. Hopefully that helps. Sure.
Mr. Schroeder, Dr. Schroeder, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, Jeff can help clarify this for me. I assume he doesn't mean, I assume a private business can put up a sign that says no shirt, no shoes, no service. I used to see those, and I think that's the business's right to be able to say that, and enforcing that has to be a total mess. I doubt anybody hardly ever gets arrested for that one, but the mask could be the same. I assume what Jeff's is not saying is how do we enforce something that we want to happen. It's what if something gets pushed on our community from those above where we aren't feeling like they're doing something constitutional or something like that? And Jeff, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Jeff's saying what do we do in a voluntary situation or whatever, but what if we feel something's being pushed on us from up above that shouldn't be? And Jeff, please tell me I'm wrong if I am.
I think that's pretty right. I guess the follow up to that. Thank you both, Chief and Mr. Link, for answering that. I do appreciate those answers. I guess my follow up is could we maybe consider some type of statement in the document? Because a lot of this, in the swirl and churn of the chaos of the disaster or even the COVID-19 situation, what's going to happen after this is lawsuits. And a lot of the things that need to get worked out to who was right, who was wrong, whose property was violated, all those questions ultimately get settled in the court, not on the street. And I understand that. And one of the things that can help is how well things get documented or how well policies are clarified. And that's where my mind is on this is, could we perhaps have it could even be like a prologue or a small abstract or introductory section, some type of single page type addition to the document that makes some statements about affirming enumerated rights of citizens in the U.S. Constitution and the Kansas Constitution, something in there that allows for some, should rights be violated or people feel that they were violated or whatever, is that the type of thing we could put in the document, some kind of clarifying upfront statement that all this was within that context? I don't know what the language would necessarily look like, but I mean, I guess that's my concern is should there be, it seems like there should be some kind of brief statement at a bare minimum that addresses that issue.
Sir, if you've noticed that in all these orders, it doesn't say how to do it. they're vague on how to execute these orders at the local level, and they basically have to be, because every community is different. The resourcing and the available resources are different community to community. But also keep in mind, and reference more specifically to your question, the burden of proof during a declared disaster is gross negligence. So, in order to file a lawsuit against a governmental entity, that first burden of proof would be, how did this governmental entity go beyond, basically gross negligence in the execution of their plan? So that's the other thing that we offer under a declared emergency, which is the burden of proof goes way up. So it's no longer simple negligence. Your agency that's whoever's suing you would have to be able to get over a significant change in the burden of proof. Does that make sense also? So
Yeah.
I think with what your question is, I'm trying to think of a good way to, my example to you would be, is if you were doing some of the things that we've seen on the national level TV, I would argue that you're probably getting a little bit more closely to that gross negligence act, rather than like we're doing right now, talking about it and trying to come up with ways that maybe offer a better explanation within our community morals of executing those policies. So what does that look like, to the local Walmart? I probably shouldn't use store names, but what would that look like? What it look like to the corner convenience store? And if they've passed that, then maybe that's where they're talking. The business owners are talking with the chief there and saying, how could we do this better? Here's what the order says, but how do we enforce that locally based on the resources available and not disadvantage other people? Most of the complaints that we're seeing is basically one business trying to comply and watching the other one across the street not comply. And that you might have heard that in one of the commission meetings here recently, where we basically had the tattle on your neighbor complaint line, for lack of a better term. I think one of the commissioners used a different term, but that's essentially what it was. But again, other than going over and talking to those businesses and advising them of what the policy, the directive states, there's really no other enforcement mechanism. And I would never expect the law enforcement community to be able to come out in that. That doesn't mean they don't go talk to them and don't try to enforce it. But going beyond that conversation, I think, is a very tough burden of proof to get over. In my mind, and the way I was raised, two wrongs don't make a right. So if I do infringe upon those individual citizen rights and try to force, the will against them, and especially in the days of, everybody and their brother has a video device, you're going to wind up on the national news. And I don't know that Kansas or our local communities will stand for those types of actions. Not saying that won't stand in other communities, but it's a very, very high burden I think, to prove. That hopefully that helps a little bit, sir.
Mr. Elsoff, I think it was a great question to ask, and it is something that I'm very concerned with as well. And I'm not an attorney, and I will defer the legal discussions to our attorney, Ms. Kelly. But the thing that, for me, that kind of solidified a lot of this kind of issue was looking at that case law of Jacobson versus Massachusetts, about 100 years old. But in that situation, it was Hasidic Jews that did not want to be inoculated, I think, for smallpox. And they objected to that, and it went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said that in an emergency situation like that, they have the right to impose the inoculation for the public good. But they made a statement in there that was very key to me, and that is it cannot be done in an arbitrary manner. And I think what we've seen across the nation is things that were done arbitrarily. They didn't think through equal requirements across the board for these issues. They said, no, you type of business cannot operate, but you type of business can, and that's arbitrary. So that was a concern to me. Anyway, I'll defer to Ms. Kelly if she has something to elaborate on that.
Mr. Mayor, I think this conversation is going very well in that you're right. Having these conversations sometimes is 90% of the battle. Coming up with good logical reasoning for why you would interfere with someone's rights locally and having that conversation before the incident happens is exactly what you want to be doing. The problem comes in when the emergency has happened and someone makes a rash decision and they say, well, just this group can't do that. That's when you run into those constitutional issues or the lawsuits. But by having this conversation at a time when you're level-headed and you're making a good faith effort to carry out the laws and protect people's rights and follow the governor's order, this is exactly what you should be doing. So I know we're kind of theoretically talking here, but yes, this is the way this process should go, whether it's vetting through your plan now or closer to an emergency trying to fully execute it. So yeah, you're thinking about the right things.
Very good. Thank you for that. Do we have any other questions or discussion for Chief Atterbury or Mr. Link? So just to recap what I heard, that we want to update this plan, and Chief is going to take care of that and have it reviewed at the department heads or at the department level. Once that's done, we're going to ask the county to review it. They've offered their assistance to that. And then after that's all been accomplished, we were going to have it presented back to the council in the final draft. Then we want to look at implementing training for the council and for staff and employees. And hopefully I've gotten all the high points there from what I've heard from this conversation. If I haven't, somebody please tell me.
So, Mr. Link, what's the next step as soon as it's authorized by the council? Oh, your microphone's off.
Hold on, let me get that. Hopefully I got it there. Okay, so the primary point of contact is for the county level is our community planner is Heather. And Heather Zaragoza will review it initially, and then she will include it in as an annex to our base county plan. It goes to the state for approval. So again, that's what I mean by the nesting piece. Is it is actually going to become part of the county level plan.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Link or Chief Atterbury on this subject? Hearing none and seeing none, I think we will go on to the next item on the agenda. So thank you, Mr. Link. I appreciate you joining us. And I think Chief Atterbury probably wants to stay on for the next issue, so we won't dismiss it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Chief. I called you on my cell phone earlier, so if anything else comes up and you need me to call back in, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll drop off.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Sure. The next item on the agenda is golf carts, and I had a late addition to the agenda. I did that today. I think it got added to the agenda later on. Just a draft proposal that I made. A bullet points is all it is. But we did talk about this last year sometime. I think it says in staff report sometime like May or April of last year. I can't remember exactly when it was, but anyway, we had talked about this. So, but I know that Andrew Reese has asked us to revisit this issue. I think there is some interest among some council members to discuss it, and so I will open it up for discussion. Talk about it. And just so you know, our protocol on this has been. Somebody got a microphone or he's turned off.
Can you hear me?
On this is if you want to talk, use the chat, and then I will mute myself so it won't keep echoing and see what happens to that.
So you waiting on me, Mayor Benaj?
Yes, sir.
So it looked like it was just brought to my attention kind of late notice today, but we were talking about golf carts again. I didn't have anything formal put together for this meeting, so I apologize.
I wasn't quite prepared for today's meeting, but I wanted to jump on and just kind of hear what was said and see if I could provide any thoughts, opinions to this matter. I know it's probably not one of the more pressing matters with what's going on, but just kind of wanted to touch base and see what was said.
Okay, yeah. I do have Mr. Smith to speak.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm getting a lot of feedback, I think, from Andrew when your mic is unmuted. I don't know if you're picking up your own speaker or not. So please, I don't know if there's anything you can do with that. But I wanted to make you aware of that. It might be helpful. I know that when you came last time, you talked with us about why you were interested in us discussing golf carts and how it would be beneficial in your enterprises from your perspective. I think it might be helpful, since we have a lot of new council members, if you could just share a few thoughts around how this would be valuable from your perspective and for the city to look at this issue.
Yep. So I don't know if that helped. I tried to turn it off. Can you hear me okay now? Good. So from my perspective, it would help me just from the maintenance aspect of the neighborhood, kind of similar to, I think, what goes on over at the Catholic Care Center. I've got my dad. I'm a small operation up here with the development. I've got my dad helping me out. So, you know, I've got the golf cart going around the community, and maintenance aspect, it does make it a whole lot easier. This is kind of, you know, for conversation or not, but going around just picking up trash, it's a whole lot easier to do it from a golf cart than it is my truck and parking and popping out and taking care of things. Same with the weed eating aspect, the mowing aspect. But in addition to that, we got the Parade of Homes coming up. It actually starts the last weekend of May. But I do want to reiterate, just like what I spoke about the first time we talked about this matter, is more so than just me taking care of the neighborhood. I'd love to see it from just a community issue as a whole. I will say that I probably shouldn't even go and say this, but just the times I've been on my golf cart messing around on my lots, just again, the camaraderie, the getting out, being exposed to people, you know, I'm a proponent from community building as well as maintenance for just my subdivision, you know, in general. And so, again, I'm not trying to make an issue out of a non-issue. I want that to be clear. I'm not trying to make this an issue when it shouldn't be, but I will say I've spoken to many people that I know, friends and acquaintances through our neighborhood of Central Park, as well as Elk Creek, as well as Iron Gate. And I do believe there are more individuals out there that would like to possibly drive a golf cart around the community if we could figure out a way to put together, you know, rules and regulations that our chief of police feels good about, as well as the community as a whole. So, again, I do want to reiterate, not trying to make an issue out of a non-issue, just wanting to bring up an item that I feel like could possibly help create a little more community involvement, buy-in, as well as help with me and my quest of trying to get Central Park figured out and done.
Thank you. Mr. Elsoff, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, I guess, well, I initially just wanted to address Andrew's initial question about what we talked about or what, I know we haven't had a major discussion about it, but I did express in the last, I don't forget if it was the last council meeting or the last workshop, I forget when it came up, but Anyway, last time this came up, forget if that was a year ago or more than a year ago. I don't really remember. But I remember, Andrew, your description of how you're using it, just like you summarized today. And I understand exactly how you want to use it and why you want to use it. And I think all your reasons are good, good reasons, especially the community aspect of it and the building, the community aspect. However, I'm not convinced this is something that we should do in terms of opening up golf carts to the community. I guess there's two major reasons why. One is that you're basically the only person that I'm aware of that wants to do this in the community. I forget if there was another person that was brought up last time, but it seemed like there was either just you and perhaps another individual or whatever. But I think if there were a lot more people expressing interest, that would be helpful for giving it more consideration. But creating the regulations and the ordinance and the details of that, it just, when we looked at it a year ago, and based on the information we were given today for this meeting, it just seems fraught with little problems that need to be overcome and specified. It seems like it would be a major effort to get those in place. But then, if I recall correctly, and Chief, you can correct me if I'm not correct about this, but generally speaking, the advent of allowing these vehicles, whether they're golf carts or the LSVs, the low-speed vehicles as they're called, where they're not considered golf carts, they're considered something between a golf cart and a small car, basically, or one of those like kind of XUV type vehicles. They become problematic for police because these vehicles tend to also, as more people in the community get into them, you have more problems because you have violations of all the little regulations and details and stuff, and that all has to be enforced, and it becomes a problem. I mean, if we could, and the other problem this presents is that I can see how in Central Park in particular that the advent of introducing golf carts would be very good idea for that particular neighborhood. Just the way the houses are arranged and the way the streets are, and there tends to be a lot of open space, and it makes a lot of sense for that area. But there's plenty of others of neighborhoods and areas that are a lot more confined, where a golf cart would really be, on the street would cause a single golf cart could potentially cause a lot of difficulty or whatever. And that's kind of the problem is we want policies that apply to all of Bel Aire, and not go down the road of breaking up individual neighborhoods and say, well, if you live in this neighborhood, you could have it, but you couldn't have it in these neighborhoods. If we ever did something like that, I mean, I think that would just cause a lot of new conflicts and issues between neighborhoods or that kind of thing. So, as sympathetic as I am to your particular use and intent, I just don't see how we can give like a citywide type opening up to these things without creating a whole bunch of new problems. And, it's one of those things where if there was a lot more people that were really wanting these things, I still don't know that would necessarily push me into it, because then you're talking about a lot of these things on the road, and the examples we know of in other communities and other states where they have these, kind of golf course communities, or these like retirement communities where like half the population has these things and they're all running around in them. Like, that's like a completely different situation than what we have in Bel Aire. And I am not convinced at all that we should go down the road of allowing golf carts in our city. I am conflicted about it, but ultimately I'm landing on no. I really don't support this. So I guess that's all I have to say right now. I hope you received that well.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I would just like to make the one point to it in the matter of, I don't think you guys hear about the people that actually want the golf carts because we aren't allowed to have golf carts. Although me as an owner of golf carts, talking to many of our friends and neighbors, and you are right, it may be a little more specific to the Central Park area, which is where I live and operate and play, but there are several more members than just me that actually are asking me to follow up with them after our meetings that we discuss this matter, because they're waiting to hear. In fact, I know 3 people just offhand right now that have golf carts sitting in their garage that they'd love to get them out and utilize them, and they're just waiting for me to tell them what is transpiring from these meetings. So I do agree that you're probably not hearing about this matter from a community standpoint, but I also think that has something to do with the fact that it hasn't necessarily been brought to the attention of a lot of community members. And again, my argument has gone back to the day one of, I look at a place like Andover that has golf carts allowed in their community, and they have a set rules. And I guess my hope would be we could look towards somebody like an Andover and adopt the same set of rules that applies to that. Because again, my hope would be that we do not try to go and isolate this to one area, but more include the entire community as a whole. And I know that may that may bring up certain issues that the chief of police has concerns with, which I'd love to hear about, and I'm sure is going to be valid points. But I guess, again, I go back to there's communities that are in our backyard like Andover that do allow it, that have regulations put in place, that it seems to be a very functional and safe operating ordinance. That I guess my hope would be we could look into those rules and regulations where they are working in places like Andover and maybe look to adopt them.
Thank you. Dr. Schroeder.
Yeah, I think this is one of the funny ironies of governing, because you can say something like, we as the governing body want to give people the most freedom possible, unless, of course, it negatively affects someone else. And so this is the thing. It's like, we'd like to give the freedom of the golf cart, freedom, right? We should, it goes the right speed. You have a driver's license, whatever, it's legal. We should freedom, we should have freedom. But then, of course, ironically, in order to give the freedom, we will have to make the rule book thicker. We'll have to have more regulations and more rules and so on and so forth. So it's just weird that sort of the freedom for Andrew to be able, and his friends, neighbors, whatever, in their community, use a golf cart, will actually have to have more regulation in order to do that, which I think's kind of funny. And I guess where I'm on this is, I'm in favor of us doing the extra annoying work of creating regulations that we don't want to create in order to give our citizens just a little bit more freedom in this particular case. I think the use will be pretty specific. If you're not allowed to drive on Woodlawn, Oliver, 37th, 45th, because those speed limits are too high, this is going to be a very small, niche-y thing. And I can't imagine me wanting to own a golf cart in my particular neighborhood. Where would I go? I mean, once I get to the main road, I'd have to stop, and so I don't think this would be a huge thing. But my thought is I would be willing to do the big headache in order to just give our citizens, even if it's not that many of them, just a little bit more freedom.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with with Dr. Schroeder's comments. I think that it can be annoying to write all of these regulations, but we should allow people to do things, with their private property. People walk on streets, people drive their cars on streets, people ride their bicycles on streets. I don't know why we can't allow people to ride their golf carts on streets. It's just another type of transportation, and I don't feel that it puts the public at any additional safety risk by allowing those vehicles on the streets any more than somebody walking or somebody riding a bicycle or doing any number of activities that are allowed on the streets. It seems like just another use case for the streets, and of course with any activity people will undertake risks, but it's not our job to necessarily protect people from themselves or from taking risks that we may not take as individuals along those same lines. And so I'm also in favor of creating some regulations that allow this in those purposes.
Good, thank you. Anyone else want to make any discussion or comments regarding this issue? Mr. Atterbury, Chief.
There we go. Some of the things that were brought up, that it would be good for the community. We're not built for this. Our streets, other places, I know Mr. Elshoff has read, and I don't know if you all read this document, but our streets are not wide enough for these. That's one thing. In communities where these are used, they have special pathways, the streets are wider, and they're built that way from scratch. Our streets are not built for slow-moving traffic like this because they're limited to 20 miles an hour. That's as fast as they can go. If they go between 20 and 25, they're a low-speed vehicle. And then they have to have all sorts of safety equipment. If they go over 25 miles an hour, they're classified as a vehicle. So 25 miles an hour, even on our 30-mile-an-hour streets, you're not going to get the complaints probably, but I am. And I will be happy to let you know every time I do. And that's one thing. The other concern is use on our sidewalks. We are expanding Woodlawn, and we've put in wider sidewalks. I can tell you now, because we have speed zone signs, and we have stop signs, and we have other traffic control devices, and we write a lot of tickets because people don't do what the signs say to do. They don't abide by those signs. If we set up that set of rules, whatever set of rules Mr. Schroeder, Dr. Schroeder alluded to, the laws that govern the use of golf carts, people will not abide. And I say that because I've talked to chiefs in cities where they do have golf carts, and they are the bane of their existence. People do not follow the rules. They don't follow the law. You can go to Benton. You can go to Cheney. You can go to even Andover that has a golf course. But people ride on the streets where they're not supposed to. I don't know if they write tickets or not. I'll be happy to. The abiding of the laws are important. Now, the Catholic Care Center was brought up and discussed. I believe Andrew brought that up. That's a private area, and except for one street, that they contain their use of their golf carts on that one private area. I'm personally, I don't believe we should, we're a city of over 8,000 people. I don't think we should make a law that allows even a dozen people to exercise that right with property that way. And here's why I say that. Since I've been, on the Planning Commission years before I was was chief, we had situations where people would buy jet skis, trailers, mobile homes, camp trailers, and no really golf carts, but then they would get them outfitted and they would park them on the street or park them in their driveway or park them on the side of the street, and they would get a letter from the city saying that you can't do that. We have laws, and you can't have that out there because we have a community feel. We don't want that type of thing in front of our homes and in the streets. And we already have those laws in place, but they already put those there. And the question was always, well, I bought it. I put all this money into it. What do you expect me to do now? Well, that's not really on you as a council or me. That's for our citizens to look at before they make the purchase. I believe, Andrew, that might be your situation, as if I remember our conversation a couple of years ago. So we shouldn't make a law to let somebody do something because they've made a big purchase. At least that's my feeling on that. Now, the other thing is within that large document from AARP, I look at it from a traffic safety standpoint and from a public safety standpoint. And without an extraordinary set of rules and regulations that could be put in place, I'm concerned for the safety of our citizens because as the studies in here indicate, it just takes a very low speed crash for somebody to be injured terrifically. The head injuries, concussions, and other traumatic brain injuries from traffic crashes at low speed with a golf cart are high. And that's not the kind of case I want to work because your police department responds to those cases, and I think one way to avoid that is not to allow them on the streets. Without a lot of safety equipment on the vehicle, then they would be if struck from behind, in front, we're going to see some higher injury rates, to be sure. Let's see. There's another document. Let's see what happens when golf carts hit the street. These are people who have taken the time to study the issue and really look into it. And they've done that so that we can have the benefit of their research. And in this document, it's from 2016, but I think it's still beneficial today. People in these vehicles are as much as risk as somebody on a bicycle. But I would say maybe even more. There's very little protection in a golf cart. And you have me to give you this warning that if we have these on the street, it's only a matter of time before somebody is injured. I don't want anybody to be injured. I don't want Andrew to be injured. It's no doubt useful for him in his business, but we should never create a law that only benefits a few people. Whether it be a law about property or anything else. The law is already in place that says you can't drive them on the street. So we would have to create a lot of conflict with state law. We can do that. It says we can do it. But should we do it? I have grave concerns over the adoption of any ordinance that's going to put our citizens in danger. So I'm open for questions.
Mr. Elsoff.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I put my talk cue in before the chief gave his explanation there. But I guess I wanted to address just before Councilman Smith and Councilman Schroeder characterized this as promoting freedom or somehow increasing freedom of the citizens. And we're talking about access to the public roads. So my question for you, Chief Atterbury, is the public roads is that about freedom? Is that a libertarian area of our community where we promote freedom on the streets? Is that something we do as a society in the United States?
Such as?
Well, our roads are filled with laws and regulations. There's a lot you cannot do on the streets. And we've been okay with that as a community, as a society, as a country. The public roads are heavily regulated. Our cars are heavily regulated. The streets are not about promoting freedom. They're not. They're about following the traffic laws. You got to follow all the traffic laws. There's a lot of laws. We all are familiar with them because we drive our cars every day. But to characterize opening up the streets to golf carts as increasing freedom of the citizens, I think that's I don't think that's accurate at all. That's not what this is. This isn't about increasing freedom of citizens. The roads are heavily regulated. That domain, like it or not, our society has chosen to heavily regulate and not allow a lot of freedom on the streets. And that's how, we reduce accidents and promote safety on the streets as much as possible through the heavy regulation. It is not about just letting more, vehicles of different types on the street. It's a mistake to characterize this as we're going to increase freedom of this. That's not what's going to happen. There's a whole bunch of laws and regulations that are going to be clamped down during this freedom increase. So I hate to see it characterized that way. I don't think that's really accurate at all.
Well, I think Dr. I'm sorry, I'm going to get you to be a doctor sometime or another here. Dr. Schroeder alluded to that. He said, with that freedom comes this group of laws, and we've got a lot of communities around us who allow golf carts. Some have golf courses, some don't. Why a city without a golf course would allow golf carts is beyond me. But I know that, for instance, the cities that I've already mentioned, the law enforcement in those communities wish they would go away, because what they see is granddad lets the 4-year-old steer the golf cart into the ditch. And then they have to roll the thing back over because it's dumped over and the kid's hurt, minor injuries. That type of thing happens all the time. I'm concerned about things like that because people tend not to follow the rules. And Dr. Schroeder, you know that. It's biblical. It's just one of the things, the way we're built is to resist a lot of rules. And my concern is people will do that with the golf carts. It's something that we don't have a concern about now because, no, they're not allowed. And Andrew, I know that you would like to use yours. And contrary to what Mr. Elshoff said, Councilman Elshoff said, there might be a way to isolate it to a neighborhood. But that's up to you as a council. You can do that. Now, there might be a political price to pay with other people in other parts of the city who want it just as much as the people up here. But those are decisions that you'll have to make because I think the people who are going to be angry because that 20-mile-an-hour golf cart is in their way and not letting them get down the street, I think you're going to hear from those people too, because they have rights to traverse the streets unimpeded also. So, did that answer that, Mr. Elshoff?
Thank you, Chief. Dr. Schroeder.
Yeah, this issue of if someone uses a golf cart, they could hurt themselves doesn't resonate too strongly with me. I think motorcycles are super dangerous, and you basically just get yourself killed on them. I know people that, say, I would never do that. I did it when I was younger. I got too comfortable with them. 4 broken bones later, I quit driving my motorcycle. And so I don't own one. I think they're dangerous, and I think they're a bad idea. But we let people do it. And will someone on a golf cart hurt themselves? Will Andrew, do something dumb and hurt himself? Maybe. Good, but that's his choice. And as long as we're not doing something that's endangering other people, so when people drive their motorcycle, it's not like it's dangerous for the car that they run into when they get themselves killed. And I'm not sure Andrew's going to rear end someone and hurt them probably. So as long as he's only driving in low speed limit areas, I'm not sure he's putting other people at risk. So you probably wish motorcycles were banned. It would probably make your job way easier if they were. But we kind of have this. We allow people to make decisions, and I guess this is just something where I like to. Now, if Andrew lets his 10-year-old, if he has one, drive it, ticket him to high heaven. I'm great. Send him to jail if he won't listen to you. I don't care. But I'm okay with allowing him to make a poor choice. We let people do it with motorcycles all the time.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say that I thought the proposal that the mayor laid out in the council packet was a good one. I thought that struck a nice balance of letting the people that have golf carts use them in the neighborhoods, letting them, take advantage of their personal property. I understand why the chief is not in favor of this. If I worked in the police department, I also maybe wouldn't be in favor of this, but I do think it comes down to, allowing people the freedom to use their personal property to the extent that it doesn't create a safety issue for other people, and that it's not detrimental to society. And I think that we can find a way to do that here. And I think the mayor's proposed outline is a good place to start there. And so I don't know what the other council members are thinking. I know I've shared my thoughts. Dr. Schroeder shared his thoughts. Councilmember Elshoff shared his thoughts. I don't think I've heard from Councilmember Welch or Councilmember Nguyen. It may be that only a couple of us are in favor of this and we should just move on, or maybe it does warrant further discussion. I'm not sure, but I would be curious to hear thoughts from the other council members as well.
Yes, I think we would like to hear this as well, but I do have a couple. Chief Atterbury, did you want to speak?
Oh, well, one of the reasons why I'm against it is it's already against the law. And you are talking about taking something that is already against the law and making it legal. It happens on occasion, but it doesn't mean it's right. I believe that there are some serious things that are going to happen, but that's a concern of mine. I would, I didn't apparently get the outline that the mayor sent out earlier, so I'm not sure what some of you have been talking about the outline or the plan or the options. So I'm a little behind on that.
I apologize on that. I did send it out late and didn't get added to the package until like about 6 o'clock is the last time I saw it. But Mr. Lasher, you asked to speak. I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Well, as oftentimes council will ask my opinion, although they haven't yet, so I thought I would just kind of join in here. So I have some concerns, like the chief. Obviously, I'm opposed to it. Andrew knows that, although I think Andrew has some specific reasons that if we were going to make something allowable, he certainly has a reason for that. The concerns I have, the chief addressed the safety issues. The organizational concerns I have is, number one, we talk about, and we've talked about it earlier, essential duties and what they are and how they affect our staff versus non-essential. Well, in this situation, to me, this looks like a non-essential duty we're now adding to our staff. We will most certainly have to do some type of permitting. So that means another type of permit we're going to have to collect and issue. The question is, what's that permit fee? Do we want to have it so that everybody is affordable and $25 or $5 or whatever, or do we really want to cover our costs and put it at $250 or $500 to register a golf cart? So that's a question that would have to be answered, and whether or not you want to limit golf carts. Obviously, it's just like speeding. The higher the permit is, the less people you would have registering anything. And then the police department time. Typically we have 2 officers on duty at every shift. They're handling numerous types of issues, so we're going to add golf carts to that or whatever. Are they going to have to be, when we issue permits, are we going to have police inspect them to make sure that they have the lights, that they have the brakes, that if it's limited to 20 miles per hour, somebody's going to have to inspect that. Then the other piece is what I can see, and since we're talking about Central Park, I could see a lot of people utilizing that to drive to the pool. So now in our parking lot in the pool, we've got 20 golf carts sitting in there. Or do we need to find a different location for the golf carts versus the cars? People are going to drive down to the lake to fish. So, they're going to be parking along the street with their fishing equipment and fishing, and then jumping on the golf cart to head home. As the chief said, I'm sure we're going to get complaints about people following a 20-mile-an-hour golf cart and saying, hey, the speed limit's 30. Why are we allowing golf carts to go 20? I've got to follow them. Now I got to pass them, and those types of things. So those are my concerns from an administrative side. And, I would encourage, if it's something you want to move forward, that you give us a little time to kind of figure out how that would look and give us some of your input.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Welsh.
Get myself unmuted there. Okay, you asked for my opinion. I do not favor golf carts at all. I would like to help Andrew out, since he's doing development. I don't know what way we could help him out that would still not let the general population have the golf carts. But that's my opinion on this matter. And I watched the last workshop last year, and this issue went round and round and round then, and it just didn't gain any favorable traction. Apparently nobody's asked for it except Andrew. If other people want it, maybe they should get a petition together so we see there really are a lot of people that want this instead of just 1 or 2. That's kind of where I stand.
Okay, thank you. So any other discussion on this? Ms. Wynn, we have... You're on.
Every time I touch the keyboard, I lose the picture. So
Well, we see you just fine.
Okay. Well, if you can hear me, I don't have to see me when I'm talking. That would kind of make me feel a little nutty, in fact. My understanding, because I didn't have any information from when you appeared before the council before, but you are using this in your business. I'm correct on that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And are we trying to ban him from using it within his business with this, or just expand it so everybody can use their golf cart and what have you? Is there any reason he can't still use it in his business?
I think the issue there is that he can use it within his own property, but he can't use it to commute from one piece of property to the other, and he has some properties that are disconnected. If I understand you correctly, Mr. Reese.
Yeah, that's correct. I've got properties, throughout Central Park. So obviously, for me getting from one place to the other does require me, if I was to use the golf cart, to go out on roads or city property to get from one to the other.
Okay, well, that's, again, I have been around a lot of developments in different forms and fashions and what have you, and many of the construction people use them to get from one property to the other and what have you. And I have no problem with that. I see that as time saving and money saving for those people. Having 8 grandchildren, I don't want any golf carts around me when they're around, kind of thing. And I know there are a lot of kids out here. So, I have no problem working towards some kind of a solution, but it would have to be pretty limited to allow, the use of golf carts, and especially by a single person or single business, if there were more that were interested. And obviously the council has alluded to the fact that they have not heard that from that since the last time you had appeared. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Elstad.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, you answered. I was going to answer Councilwoman Wynn's question, but you answered it, Mr. Mayor, so I have nothing else to add.
It feels to me the consensus here is to not move forward with this. I think there's some pretty strong support for it. But Dr. Schroeder has asked to speak, so Dr. Schroeder, I'll allow you to speak.
Yeah, I fully expected the staff and anyone part not be for it, because usually anything that involves me doing more work, my natural reaction is to say no. So I was fully expecting staff and everybody else to not do it because it would be more work for all of them. But so that's not too much of a surprise. But I was with you, Mr. Mayor, regarding this. It sounds like Councilman Smith and I are the only ones wanting to move forward with the proposal that you gave, which I also agreed with. And if he and I are the only ones pushing it forward at this point, unless we get more input from citizens that causes one of our other members to move it, it sounds like we do have a consensus, and I think you're about ready to say that, so I'm sorry for preempting you on that.
No problem. I want to make sure everybody had an opportunity to say what they felt they need to say. So that is what I feel is the consensus, is to not move forward with this. If we would find that there would be community support for this, or petition or something else, we might be willing to revisit it. It sounds like, if that's what I'm hearing from council members. So I think we will keep this tabled for now and move on to our next item. But I do thank you for your input, Mr. Reese and everybody else. It's been an interesting discussion, and I do appreciate everybody's.
Can I just finish with maybe a question and just comment real quick?
Certainly.
Is there any kind of resolution to me being able to use that to the development? I mean, I know everybody's had input on that, but is there any official resolution to that?
I am not seeing that. To me, like that would be creating a special situation or a special arrangement. I didn't hear that there was a consensus that there was willingness to do that. And personally, I'm not really keen to that kind of idea. It does too much of a favoritism. While we like you very well, I don't want to get into that kind of a situation personally, if we can avoid that. I am certainly willing to entertain ideas, but, and I think the council would be willing to entertain ideas, but I don't know of any right now.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss it and at least folks understand what you think about it. Dr. Schroeder, are you back?
Yeah, Andrew, I would encourage you to, if there are a number of other people, if you get the community moving on this, you know, you don't need to move me really, but if you want, if it's just hard, you can see how it's hard for council members when they're trying to consider 8,000 and they're not sure if they're considering one over 8,999 or whatever. So if you are passionate about this and you feel you want to go with this forward, you know, obviously blood, sweat, and tears on getting more people to be on your side would probably be the way to move, because I think all of us on the council want to do the will of the people. We're just not sure sometimes what it is and doing the best that we can. And so with one person, you know, I think, you know, we're kind of guessing what the will of the people might be, or working on some principles we're trying to do. But I think if you got some huge community support, even staff would be even more willing, as much as they would not like it probably because it'd be more work for them. They would be more willing to understand if that's what the people wanted, because we do all ultimately work for the people. I mean, you guys are the taxpayers.
No, and I appreciate that. And I guess that's maybe just a small amount of my frustration is I am out with the people on a daily basis. I'm very tied in with the people, I feel, although that is a little bit maybe specific to Central Park. I feel that I do get firsthand, you know, feedback from a whole lot of residents in our community. I struggle a little bit with the idea of safety being an issue just based on bikes, motorcycles. If you look at the rules and regulations put in place with a place like Andover, you got to have seat belts, you got to have parking brakes, you got to have turn signals, you got to have slow moving vehicle. You can't be on roads over 25. So, I mean, safety, I struggle a little bit with, not to mention that even in Central Park, you know, we get people that park on the main drag right at the bridge through Central Park, which is a very confined area, and there's no non-parking, and I think that's a hazard just as much as anything from a golf cart driving through the community. And so I appreciate all of the rebuttal to it. I will probably dig a little deeper with, you know, the residents to see if I can get any names behind this more so than just mine, because I think that is a watered down approach. I'll just be honest. If I was sitting in your guys' shoes and there's only one guy coming to the table with any kind of concern with this, there's probably not a whole lot of weight behind it. But again, it's coming from a place of personal need. In addition to talking to people, I will probably work a little bit more on it. You know, at the end of the day, my only goal with being associated with all of this is to create camaraderie in a city. I think that's good for a city. I think that, you know, people out and about and mingling, I hate to say this, but COVID-19 has brought out, I think, the best in a lot of people. And I think that shows that people wanting to get out and just be a part of a community is a big deal. And I believe strongly in that. I believe in any means possible to try to get people out and create community involvement and environments. But again, I know that there's a lot of things that I, as a sales guy, developer guy, I'm not, you know, considering, like ordinances and all the background scene, you know, all the background items that go into this. So I'll probably do a little more legwork. I appreciate everybody's honesty and input on the matter. I appreciate everybody's time on the matter. And maybe we can see if we can bring something back to you guys here in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Reese.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify from our standpoint, staff standpoint, I know Dr. Schroeder had mentioned that. Yes, it is more work. The concern I have is, as we talked about earlier this year in our strategic planning, we have a very small staff. And so when something's added to our plate, we have to come back to you and say, what is it that you want us to not do? So if there's other projects you want us to work on, then it's like, well, you want us to not do that. So, but we're happy to do, if it's something that council wants to move forward and you tell us the parameters, we'll make it work. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not that we're against it, it's just that it does add something to our plate, and then we have to decide, well, do we put our time towards this or something else? And that's my only concern.
Thank you. Mr. Welch.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard Andrew say was that Andover's laws only let you drive on 25-mile-an-hour streets, not 35. And if that's the case, then we'd have to lower the speed limit on all those streets. And if our speed limits match the speed limits of the golf cart, it wouldn't be such an issue. So maybe that's a way to approach this. If all the Central Park people are willing to lower the speed limits to 20 miles an hour, maybe they can get it done.
I would suggest that maybe that's an issue that will allow them to come back and give us that kind of feedback if we want to pursue that. But thank you. Okay? Very good. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate your time. I think we've exhausted this issue, and I think we should go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the council vacancy policy. And Ms. Kelly has drafted a proposal based upon input she got from the last workshop. So I will let her talk about her draft, and we can go from there. Ms. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is the volume okay?
It's great for me.
Okay, thank you. So last month's workshop, we got to tear into this document and come up with lots of changes, lots of feedback. I just wanted to make sure it all synthesized into one direction. And I'm pretty pleased with what came out of that workshop. I think it's clear. I think it's thorough. The policy lacked detail. Again, you don't want every policy to have all the detail because there'll be something that you'll miss, or it'll be so long that it won't be executed properly because no one will read it. But we moved from a policy that just kind of had some broad guidelines and not a lot of clear definitions to a more defined policy that does have some, okay, if this doesn't happen, then we do this. If this doesn't happen, then we do this. So it's more strategically outlined, and but yet it's still brief. So I think it covers a lot more bases for now. Just to remind everybody, at our last workshop, we talked through some changes that needed to happen. We created a clear 30-day window for people to apply for a vacant seat. We kind of were going back and forth between 30 and 45. There seemed to be some wasted time in that, so 30 days seemed to be good. It also created another 30-day window additionally to allow the mayor to just vet those nominations, to call and share or meet or whatever that may be. That window is up to 30 days. Of course, it never has to be that full 30 days. Someone requested as well that, just out of, we recently went through the substantial contribution time period that the Sedgwick County Election Commission asked us to comply with. And I was also asked to have nominees disclose if they've made contribution to the mayor's campaign, so that's been included. We hadn't talked about that one. Everything else on here we've talked about, but that's not one we talked about as a group. But that's added, and we can certainly talk about that more. Something really important, the original version, or the version you guys worked from at the last, during the last vacancy, didn't really clarify on paper whether the mayor should nominate or read a list of names. So that's very clear. It's the mayor's nomination. There seemed to be a fair consensus that's how it should be. It also allows the mayor to break a tie. So In the case of a tie, the mayor would weigh in on and vote. If for some reason the mayor's first nominee fails to be selected, the vacant seat will be offered to the next highest vote getter in the previous election. So again, as things go, if we don't have a person in that seat or a person who would be the next highest vote getter, then the mayor can either reconsider the list of applicants that have the list of candidates that have applied or open it up again. But whatever he does, he has to make sure that stays under the 120-day time period, which ties in, not to make things complicated, that 120-day time period ties into our charter ordinance. So not really wanting to get rid of that. So after 120 days, then the vacancy would go to special election, or if the group decided it should go to special election, at that point it would. We clarified because someone asked it, or the group discussed whether the special election had to be by traditional ballot, bringing in the machines and paying the election commission to run an election for us, or whether we could have a mail-in ballot. And we found out a mail-in ballot is perfectly appropriate. It's cheaper, and the clock moves faster on that. So we did add the option of hosting a mail-in ballot if we do go to special election. Just two more items. We clarified that the majority vote needed to be a majority of council members present, not a majority of the whole body, not a majority of any other calculation other than council members present at that meeting. And finally, clarified that in cases where, like we talked about with COVID-19, where things happen and you can't get everyone in the same room, or you can't achieve a quorum, or there is such a threat to the body having a quorum, that we would need to have a special election, that the city manager or the municipal judge or their designee, or the manager's designee could request a special election in order to get the governing body going to do business sooner than later. We had no provision for that. At this point, if the governing body were to fall short of quorum, we would be in this weird space where we'd be kind of making things up as we went. And so we wanted to get rid of that. So those are the items that you'll see changed in the policy. I can go into detail and talk about any section that you want to, but since we hashed through it thoroughly last time, I just wanted to be available to allow discussion.
Thank you. I appreciate the rundown, and I do like the fact that it is sort of a lot more streamlined. Getting some councilors want to speak, but real quick, I'd like to go through a couple items here, just so you could help clarify. One is the paragraph in under the policy statement. It has a municipal judge or city manager or manager's designee determine the amount of vacancies. That's not an elected officials. And could you help us understand the reason that you wouldn't have an elected official make that determination of not having a quorum versus, not that I wouldn't think they would do a good job at it, but sometimes these things seem to be that they should be decisions made by elected officials.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Mr. Mayor. I think that's a fair point. I was just at the time thinking if the risk of having a quorum is so low, then you'd have someone at City Hall step in and get that process going. But I think you bring up a good point, because it may be possible that we can contact another council member on, to come in and declare that, we're below quorum and requesting the process to initiate a special election. We can add that as an option. I think you're right. It's the most appropriate thing to have an elected official decide that. I was just thinking more narrowly in the sense that our council is incapacitated. What do we do to get government going? But I think your idea is something that we could easily, if the group is okay with, a council member, or the municipal judge or city manager in priority order, being council member first.
Okay. I do have about 3 or 4 other questions, and I do want to get to other council members' questions as well. Paragraph B1 looks like it's redundant to paragraph A2 in section 3. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I sat with it for a couple of days and then stepped away, and then looking at it again, I thought, gosh, that needs to go. However, I think paragraph A2 can be thinned out. I think it's too redundant, but I think it does need to be there because there's some of those elements are involved in identifying interests, and then some of that is also part of the selection process. So I can clean those two up. I do think that there's a little too much redundancy in those. So, yeah.
Just my experience of writing documents, when you write redundancy, that's a formula for trouble.
Right.
Okay.
Sometimes it's good, but yeah, I think here it's too much.
So, paragraph 3 with the disclosure of the nominee contributing $100 to the mayor's campaign, that just seemed, I don't have a problem with it, but just seemed like it was still unbalanced. What if they contributed that to a city council member's campaign? Would that be something that should be disclosed? And just a question to think about. And,
yeah, I think that's a discussion point for y'all. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Item 3, I just felt was a little prescriptive, but I'm okay with it if that's what the council wants to do. I'm sorry, I'm not being very clear where I am. So, section C, item 3, I thought was a little prescriptive, but I'm okay with it if that's what the council wants to do. And does the council...
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, are you talking about the 7 days?
No, I'm talking about invite the candidate to fill the vacancy in under section 3, as in Charlie, paragraph 3.
Okay.
Okay. Just, it's okay. I'm fine with it. It sounded a little prescriptive, but okay. Then paragraph D, if I understand the way our ordinance works, the council president, if the mayor's seat is vacant, he's automatically the mayor, or he or she is automatically the mayor. Is that not true?
Yes, yeah, so he automatically fills the role of the mayor. This is a clarifying point that he would exercise this policy on behalf of the mayor, or let me see.
I understand the incapacitation, that's fine.
Right.
If the mayor is no longer the mayor, he's vacated the seat, he or she's vacated the seat for whatever reason, then the council president is the mayor.
Yeah. Okay, I need to look at that. I need to look at the role of the council president as far as completing the term of the mayor, or if it's merely just a temporary substitute. I need to look at that distinction, and I'll compare it to what I have, and if it needs to change, I'll change it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Councilmember Smith, I believe you had some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say that overall I really like this process, and I thought that the write-up reflected the discussion that we had, and so I did really like it. On the comments around a council member making the determination that we don't have a quorum, Jackie, I'm interested in your perspective on that. It was my understanding that council members can really only make decisions or take action within the context of a meeting that already has a quorum. And so if there are only 2 council members remaining for some reason and you're not able to convene a quorum, I don't know how you would decide which council member gets to make that determination, or even in what context those council members would have the authority to make that determination without the convening of a meeting. And so that's kind of just a question that I had in my mind around that, is how would that actually work? And in the spirit of that, I thought, maybe it did make sense to have the municipal judge or city manager, both of whom are appointed yearly by the city council members. We confirm those votes every year to make that decision, because they could do so outside the context of a quorumed meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a really great point. I can definitely find the authority to give an individual council member permission to do something in that context. Again, you're right. The governing body is only empowered when they're in a meeting and the quorum is there and they're in that. However, to give an individual council member authority to act through this policy, it's fine. It's possible. So the authority is there. I do think we need some sort of parameters, like you're saying, to determine, well, if a council member, then which one, or how do you determine that? That's more of that's your turf. That's your turf right there, if you want that. I think you bring a good point last time when we discussed, this outside person determining that we needed to go into a special election. It was based off exactly what you're talking about, that appointed person has a sense of independence, but can be trusted to make that decision when the governing body is not able to meet. So either way can work. We would need some sort of parameters if you wanted it to be a council member.
Councilmember Elsoff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I had a couple of points to bring up. I wasn't going to address that previous point by Councilman Smith. I guess in just reading through this, if we go back to the first page, policy statement, the third paragraph, I don't know if we can do something about it reads really weird, because the policy statement begins, the very first paragraph of our policy identifies the mayor and the 5 council members, explains what their terms are, and then the second paragraph makes the statement that according to our ordinance, if a vacancy occurs, the governing body has 120 days to fill the vacancy. But then the third paragraph just kind of reads weird. It says, if at any point prior to the completion of the 120-day period, the municipal judge, city manager, or manager's designee determines that the amount of vacancies, suddenly we introduce that. I don't know. It reads weird. I found myself wondering, well, who is is it just the manager's designee, or who is this designee? And it almost reads like the judge, city manager, or manager, that each one of them could potentially have a designee to determine the amount of vacancies. It seems unclear, and I don't know if that needs to go in another section or something, but because then in section 2 for purpose, it explains the identification process the governing body will follow, but I don't know. That third paragraph just kind of reads weird. It seems out of place, or it's not introducing the people identified in it enough. I don't know if anyone else felt that when they read it, but I was struck by. I found myself wondering, what are the roles, or maybe that's identified in the ordinance more specifically. But I kind of got confused just reading that. I didn't quite follow. Another point. Well, I guess
if I can address this one before we move to the next one. The third paragraph, I understand what you're saying, because it doesn't fit with the whole overall, if everything works out fine, these are the members, this is how the policy would go. It's almost like an outlier, but I do like it up front, because it is, if that 120-day period, I guess the first 2 paragraphs are so long as, it sets the structure, it sets the time frame. If something goes wrong, to threaten that, the governing body's ability to even be a body, then this kicks in. So it is a somewhat of a independent paragraph. It could go somewhere totally different, but it's very important in that if we ever go below the threshold where a governing body can't do what this policy is requiring them to do, this is the fail-safe. So I do like it near the front. I think we can work on defining, the municipal judge and the city manager or the city manager's appointee or designee. We use that a lot in a lot of our policies, so I don't mind, identifying those people more clearly in the context of this paragraph. But it's really designed to, if the governing body could not reach a quorum, one of these people could step in and direct the clerk to hold a special election so you can get back to everything else that this policy is about.
Okay, so I guess for my clarification, then manager's designee is basically the manager can just pick a staff member to represent him in this context.
Well, and I guess maybe let me just refresh your memory. When we talked about this last time, the manager's designee came up in the context that sometimes when things go really south, all the appointed officials leave suddenly, and the governing body is left with a clerk. That happens a lot when things go bad. And so then the clerk would be the manager's designee in that context. He or she would be filling in the role of the manager during that time. Or if the manager were out of town and things went bad, and he would appoint his assistant city manager to fill in that role, it would be that appointed officials designee in charge of this process. So just in case your manager is out or unavailable, this would be the next in line. We don't list a designee for most positions, but because the city manager's role is so important, it's common to include a designee.
Okay. I guess that does help clarify my understanding of that. Okay.
So it would never be just like the manager picks it, like, oh, this random employee, come do this for me. It would be some sort of, it'd be a pressure point. At that point, it'd be, no other option available. So.
Okay, I guess I'm okay with that then. Thank you for clarifying that. I did have a couple other comments. A concern I have about the selection process. So in section 3, policy B, selection process, at point number 3, there's nothing in here that says that the mayor shall provide the interested citizens to the city, to all the residents. One of the biggest complaints in our last vacancy problem was that people said, well, we don't understand who the candidates are. We don't know the candidates or any of that. I thought that was a major thing that came out of that. And I'm surprised we have nothing in the policy that states that the mayor is going to present all of the people who submitted their letters and interest to the whole city, to the public. Section 3 reads, the mayor shall share all information provided by each interested citizen with all council members in a timely manner. But there's nothing in here about the mayor presenting it to the city, to all the residents. I think that's a mistake. We have to have that in here. We have to have a statement that all the candidates that submitted, that they're presented to the public. These are all the people. And I mean, I don't know that we need to have it in the policy, but I think it ought to be, we ought to have some kind of public forum, meet and greet the candidate type of situation where the residents can come in and talk to the candidates, however many there are, and kind of get a feel for who the candidates are, because that seemed to be a major theme of, hey, we have no idea who these people are. We just know that, you know, the mayor and the council talked about it and investigated them and interviewed them, but there was no public forum. I think at a bare minimum, this policy needs to state that the mayor shall share the names of all the candidates. I mean, per the policy, that doesn't happen. The mayor and the council could just know the candidates, and it's not disclosed to the public. I think that's for all the words we have here on 3 pages of policy, I think that's a big mistake. We ought to have a statement in there, a shall statement about sharing who the candidates are to the public. That ought to be in there.
If we can address that one before we move to the next one,
Yeah.
I would say, you know, when I looked at this and reviewed the comments that came out of this and watched the video again, I understand the strength of your argument, but that did not come up clearly. The practice had been, especially in the last, and sometimes I read the council wrong, but in the last vacancy situation, there was a sense of trying to protect the privacy of the names of the people who
Yeah,
were
that's a
not
big
selected.
mistake. I'm totally against that kind of thing. That it needs to be out in the public. Yeah,
And that's something for you all to discuss as a group. If we can get a consensus to update it, to have the names released to the public at the beginning, I would certainly update our policy to make sure that's clear.
You know how Wichita does it? When Wichita has vacancies, they submit all the candidates. They have them all come. They have it right in their policy. They shall hold a forum open to the public to share all the candidates who filed, and then right then and there, the council votes to isolate whatever that group is down to 4 to 5 people. They do a vote right there. And they narrow it down, and then they go through it. They have further process, but I mean, even Wichita City Council is very open about, hey, when all the candidates are collected, they're presented to the people. That we have to do that. I mean, if we're going to go through all this rigmarole for this, we got to have that. I think. The thing about the mayor shall disclose if the nominee has a contribution over 100. I know 100 is like a nice round number, but I think it should just say the mayor shall disclose if the nominee made any contribution to the mayor's campaign. And, you know, we brought up this idea of, you know, concern over, you know, guarding against corruption or whatever. I mean, I think that, and someone asked earlier, I think, about what about money donated to council members' campaigns or whatever. Like, yeah, I think all of that should be disclosed. That should all be open to the public. Well, it is open to the public for the Sedgwick County guidelines, but I think that should be. I think any money that was exchanged to support a campaign, that if that's documented at the county, that should be disclosed. So I think we need additional line. I think we should eliminate the $100 and just say, if a candidate or a nominee has made a contribution to the mayor's campaign, that should be disclosed. And if someone donated to council members, that should be disclosed. And if council members donated to other council members or the mayor or whatever, that all should be disclosed. I mean, I think that's fair to have that information out. You know, as I've thought more and more about this, I'm against the mayor breaking the tie on the vote. I don't think we should do that. I think a lot of this is channeling too much power to the mayor, and I think that's a mistake. So I don't support this mayor being the tiebreaker vote. I mean, we're a council with a weak mayor as a structure, and I don't think we should do that. So I guess those are The other thing that I didn't see, well, I guess that's it for now.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I really think your idea of making, having a public forum for the candidates is a great idea. We did disclose multiple times in the last go round all the candidates, so that was the names were actually out there. We didn't go deeper into that, but your idea of a forum or something of that sort, I think it's a great idea. I think that would be a great improvement. Councilmember Dr. Schroeder, you are next on the.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what's been said. Councilman Smith's, his concerns with the third paragraph, as well as Councilman Elshoff's concerns with the paragraph. Even just it's kind of confusing. I remember the conversation, so I know what you meant. But if I think I looked at this 2 years from now, I don't think I would know what you meant. And I think Councilman Elshoff did a good job trying to articulate that, which is very hard to articulate, trying to figure out why we're just not super sure what that means. Though I agree with it in principle as far as saying, yeah, 120 days, everything's falling apart. We have to have something that, pushes us forward, and we have to have it clear what pushes us forward. So I agree with that. Regarding the mayor needing to disclose the money, I agree. $100 is random. Just the mayor's totally random. So either we need to not have it in there at all, or we're going to disclose it. I can't remember why we put that in. I'm totally fine with it being in, but it just needs to be any amount of money to any person is fine. I would not see any reason to pick $100, as other people have said. I'm still for the mayor breaking the tie. 4 groups just don't exist for a reason. They're a rough way to make decisions and very easy to split. And while I agree having the mayor vote in most situations, not how we're set up, I think 4 groups are going to facilitate and much more likely push us to that 120-day. We really don't want to have to do this. We hope we never do this type thing. So I'm still in favor of it. But otherwise, I pretty much agree. We fixed that paragraph that's confusing. The $100 thing. And I think I might have had another one, but I forgot it. So if I remember it and care enough about it, I'll come back.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Welch.
I was thinking about this paragraph about the municipal judge and city manager, and your comment that the city council should have some say in that first, since they're elected officials. Should we list the remaining council in totality? So if there's only 3 left, if all 3 of them vote that we need to do this, we do it. Or if there's 2 left, if they both agree we need to do it. Or if there's only 1 left, if he says, yeah, we got to do this. Should that be how we would address that rather than, something else? And about the mayor breaking the tie, I think the mayor needs to break the tie. The mayor breaks the tie on some other votes anyway. I don't know why it would be different for this.
Okay, thank you. I think that we need to think through that policy, paragraph 1, section 1, the 3rd paragraph. But I don't know that I have the answers. My only comment to it was that typically when you have these type of deals, you take an elected official to make that call. How that's prescribed, I don't know. I understand the gist of what Ms. Kelly is trying to say here, because there are situations that has happened in some communities. I don't know that it's happened in Bel Aire, but has happened in some communities where everybody just leaves, and it's like you got 1 or 2 people left, and what do you do? How do you reestablish government there? And so I understand what she's saying. I don't know how you can break that paragraph down without making it multiple pages and prescribe it, but I do think it needs some more thought in it, and if others have suggestions on that, I think it would be good to entertain those ideas as well. Councilmember Smith, you have some.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that around that 3rd paragraph, I really liked Councilmember Welch's idea on just kind of saying unanimous consent of remaining council members, and then maybe you still need a contingency for if no council members remain, then and only then would you do something different than that. I would certainly support that. Mayor should break the tie, in my opinion. And while I do think that I really appreciated how the mayor did share the names of the candidates in the last go around of this, and I think that's a really good thing to do. And I think a public forum would be excellent too if we could get folks to come and participate in that. We do have to be careful not to make the bar so high for the candidates that we don't get any candidates because we're not the city of Wichita. Our roles are different than the city of Wichita, and I understand, you know, and I think that would have actually been a really effective way for us to get to know all of the potential candidates as well, is to have that public forum. And so I love that idea, but I do worry that the more hoops folks have to jump through to be a candidate, the fewer candidates that we'll have, and you know, we may suffer as a result of a lack of candidates for these roles. And so, just not only in the context of the public forum idea, I just wanted to share that thought because we do have to be careful there. I think, you know, I think last time we made a pretty key, or at least we came to a consensus on a key issue as to whether this seat should be filled by the mayor's appointment or by the council's appointment. And I think the more things that we put in this policy that, you know, get the council involved, maybe make a pre-selection of the list of candidates or have a public forum for the council to provide input. To the extent that we prescribe more of those things by policy, we start to erode the core idea of it being the mayor's appointment of the candidate. And if that is the way that we want to go as the council, then maybe we should look at moving it, you know, back to being the council selection, not necessarily the mayor's appointment. And so I don't think we've crossed that line, and I don't think anything that we're talking about crosses that line yet. I just do want to just kind of reiterate that I think we've got to pick a path on, is the mayor appointing this, or is the council making a selection based on getting all of the candidates together and going through a council-based process there.
So just a question for you, Councilmember Smith. Are you saying that this forum would be the forum before the council, or a public forum for all the public to hear input from the candidate?
Well, you know, I'm not necessarily trying to prescribe an idea for the public forum. I was really referencing Councilmember Elshoff when he mentioned the Wichita process and discussed how we may have a public forum. The council then votes to kind of narrow down the candidates there. I think I'm just trying to call out that if we were to do something like that, I think it would really change the entire spirit of the policy that we're working towards on it being the mayor's process versus the council's process. And if we were to have a public forum, I think we would certainly want it to be open to the public.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Nguyen, you unmuted. Are you wanting to speak?
Yes, I would like to speak. And it's going to introduce a little bit something different than what you've been talking about, because we've been talking about replacing council members, you know, type of thing. But a number of years ago, way before Ty was here, and the person ahead of him, and maybe even another one or two, we actually had a mayor that had to be removed. And had to be removed. I'm not sure that my memory goes back well enough to remember all of the things that had taken place, but you know, I mean, it was a bad situation. And I haven't heard you say anything about that, Jackie. I didn't know whether you've got anything, you know, I'm not sure I remember all of what I read, so whether you are addressing that or whether you need to add that or add some thought to it, because it can and does happen. And I do know, I can't remember now, exactly which city, but one of the small cities out west had a similar situation where, I think that one was some fraud or something like that as well. And they had that same situation of actually removing a mayor or a city administrator as far as that goes. And thank God we don't have to worry about it today, but it might need a little thought while we are thinking about all of these ifs and ands and ors that are going on here, kind of thing. So, and just on a similar note, I am not in favor of the mayor being able to break a tie. But the rest of it, I was making notes on the selection process. Sounds pretty good. May have some other ideas after I sleep on it. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Dr. Schroeder.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, before Dr. Schroeder begins, can I address the removal of the mayor? Because I don't want to separate the comments from the questions too much, at least
Yes,
the ones.
I'm sorry. Yes, please do clarify that, and then we'll come to Dr. Schroeder.
Okay, I'm sorry, Dr. Schroeder, excuse me. Councilmember Nguyen, as far as removing elected officials, I think you bring up a good point, and the next time we do our training workshop, we'll go over this because it's just good for everybody to know and keep in mind. There are some statutes that would have to be followed to recall a mayor, and it's a very public process, and I don't have it in my memory, but there is a process for that goes through, and I'm very comfortable with how that thoroughly covers that situation. But it's good for me to get you all that information and make sure we can answer your specific questions, but that's all laid out in statute. And then, of course, between contract and appointments, that for your city administrator, city attorney, municipal judge, that's all within your power, and per whatever consequences or agreements are written in the contracts. So those officers can be removed at any time by a vote of the majority, and the contract is there to clarify those points. So I'm comfortable with those positions, the mayor, other council members, and the administrative staff or the appointed staff. I think we have ways to take care of those folks. And if you do have other questions, Councilmember Nguyen, you can call me. I'm taking notes as we go along. I won't have these in the next 24 hours, so if you want to call me and I'm happy to follow up.
Well, I'm not pointing a finger at anyone, Mayor, or anything like that. I just knew that I am the only one here that would remember that situation. And I honestly, thank God you remember all the statutes and things that are available, because I just remember what a mess it was. And, if you think that we've picked and bellyached at each other a few times and what have you, it was war in the neighborhoods and things like that. So, yeah, these guys don't want to learn that the hard way. So, but I'm glad that you know that the statutes are there and what have you. So that is good. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Schroeder, now your turn.
Yeah, I was also wanted to talk about my thoughts on the making, what to make public and what not. And I think Councilman Elshoff is super correct in saying the old way was awkward in the sense that as a council member, someone would ask me how the filling was going. I wasn't even sure if I was allowed to say who the candidates were. I didn't know if I was allowed to say that or not. It was just, we were super worried about breaking, rules regarding, telling each other things and whatnot. So sort of the privacy of the old way was challenging. And so some way in which we improve that would be nice. So listing the candidates publicly, it would be like the bare minimum, right? Like everyone knows who the candidates are, and get rid of this whole, well, Dr. Schroeder, who are the candidates? It's like, well, it's, some state secret, right? Like it wasn't a secret, but I wasn't really sure if it was or not. I didn't know. So I would kind of not tell people because I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. So that absolutely needs to be made public. In a normal job, when you apply for it, you don't want everyone to know, but this is not a normal job. You're applying for public service. And so when you run for a candidate, everyone knows you're running. So I think when you put your name in to do something like this, it's totally, it should be completely expected to be public. Probably no one suggested this, and so no one probably thinks this is a good idea. So me saying it's a bad one probably might be a little bit of a waste of time, but I wouldn't want my resume that I sent in necessarily be made public at that point, so the fact that I'm applying would be one thing, but, I don't know if we necessarily need to offer the resume up, and no one's really suggested that. So making it public would be the minimum. And then that next step is going to be harder. So Councilman Elshoff brought up the example of Wichita, which is a good baseline, I think, to think about and go from, because, they try to make it public. They provide this open forum. But I probably need to think about that more and how the best way for Bel Aire to do that, because we're not Wichita. These aren't, jobs essentially that our job is very, very part-time. We're not going to do it exactly the same way Wichita is. Maybe we will. But I would really need to think more thought into what I think about that, because I'm 100% agreement on this sort of, the old policy made it feel too private for no reason, right? I kind of awkwardly made it feel private. And what we need to all do in order to fix that, is a problem I hadn't considered much, but now that Councilman Elshoff brings it up, I think it was a problem. And I'm open to continuing hearing ideas on how we can continue to fix that if we need to do something beyond making the candidates public.
Thank you. One thing I do know Wichita used to do, and I don't know if it's still the case, I do know they have these community councils where, and each city council member has a community of people who represent a body of the community if they are from. First, District 3 will have a certain number of people who advise that council member on issues in District 3. And at one time, their process was that a candidate for a particular council seat had to go through that District 3 evaluation before the council ever considered them. I don't know if that's still their rule or not. That was a rule years ago. But they are very different than we are. I agree that the having a forum of some sort is a great idea. So, Councilmember Elshoff, you're next.
Oh, thanks. I guess I don't remember putting in my queue to talk. I guess I'll just defer to Councilman Smith. I don't have anything to add at the moment. So.
Very good, Councilmember Smith.
Thank you. I was on mute. Just wanted to maybe add to the idea of how do we make the candidate process more visible. Making it less secretive. I think I agree with all the sentiment there. I think this last go around it was really helpful that all of the names were read off in that public forum, so that the candidate names were public. I do connect with, I don't recall who threw out the concern around the resumes specifically being shared. That might be a little much to make that public information. And I agree. I think I need a few more minutes to think about this, but I'm going to go ahead and think out loud and just throw out a random idea that we can all debate, and you guys can tell me it's a terrible idea. But what if we were to revise the process of applying or making your interest known for the council process to be one where we ask the potential candidate to come and speak to the council during the public comment phase to express their interest, and just let them give a quick 2-minute statement as to why they're interested in the city council seat. That would give all of us an opportunity to hear directly from them. I don't know that we would want to do Q&A right there on the spot and put them in the hot seat, but at least giving them the opportunity to come to a council meeting to publicly express their interest and for us all to see that as part of the process of them submitting their resume and expressing their interest. That might be one way to make it more visible. So I just thought I'd throw that out there.
So is there anyone want to speak to any of those issues, Councilmember Elstop?
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought of that. That's an interesting idea. I guess my initial reaction to that, though, is I guess I would, you have this issue that kind of happened with us last time where you have, one person show up, they get up there, but there aren't others necessarily at the same time. I mean, unless I don't think we should have that. If we do that, I think it's a good idea, but it should be structured so that at a particular night, after all the candidates have submitted, they all are there and they all come up one after another, and we maybe say, like, we're not going to ask questions. We're just going to let them give a 3-minute introduction to who they are and why they're running. I think that would be great, but I don't think it should be like something that takes place over like multiple council meetings, because the dynamics of each council meeting can be different, and maybe someone does ask a question or it applies to the one person that's there, but then the next night there's 3 people and they don't have time. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's a good idea, but I think it still needs to be with the spirit of, once all the candidates are gathered, they do a public forum thing. And again, the reason is to allow the citizens to hear, well, who these people are and what they want to do, that kind of thing. I would hope that would happen in addition to like a meet and greet the candidates, which I view as different than what Councilman Smith proposed. But I think we need to be careful about not letting like one person go one night. And over the course of 3 council meetings, there's like 7 people, and I think as long as we keep the candidates together, because it'll help them build confidence, because it is intimidating and awkward, especially if you're someone that's not into public speaking and stuff. That could be a reason to not want to do it, perhaps. But if all the people that are there that want to be a candidate, they're all going to be there together. They can talk to each other. There is just a human factor kind of side of that I think can be facilitated well and good and be used and encourage people to want to participate. So I think we can develop that idea. I think that's a good idea.
Very good. Dr. Schroeder.
Yeah, I totally agree with Councilman Elsoff that it needs to be one night. I think Justin may have even intended that. I don't know if he made it clear, but definitely you wouldn't need to stretch it, right? And I think a 2-minute introduction of themselves, for those of us who ran and went to debates and had to ask questions on the fly, a 2-minute talk is some work, but we're not grilling them. We're not making it super onerous, right? A 2-minute, you get the monologue, seems to be reasonable. Same night seem reasonable. If you want to have time to people to talk to the candidates afterwards, that seems reasonable. So I think the way that this is shaping up, maybe more input needs to be done, but I'm liking something like this. It's public. None of us have to be worried about introducing the candidates, or the mayor is not the one that has to talk about each candidate. I mean, that is just awkward to be like, well, I'm going to be the one that talks about each candidate. Like, you don't want to do that. So, let's let them talk for just a couple of minutes about themselves so people can know. And then when the decision's made later on, people don't have to be like, whatever. So I think this is moving in a good direction, and maybe some people have thought about some stuff that I haven't, but I'm pretty excited about this kind of solving the problem of, whether it's feeling too private or not.
Okay, I think, Ted, are you wanting to speak? It says.
Oh, that was me, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, it says, okay. Good.
Yeah, this is all working well, this discussion. I would just ask that it be clear that the public introduction be in conjunction with an application process, like a written application. I think that's just better for our record keeping, our just Cora, and then processes, and it just protects us in a lot of ways that I won't just go on and on about here. Just having someone submit their written interest in a clear way and then also come and talk about themselves is a really nice way to do it if you decide to do that. But I just ask that you don't take away the written aspect of the submission. And it doesn't have to be a resume. It could be any other form of interest.
Yeah, I appreciate that. My feel of what I heard being said was that after the 30-day application process, we would probably establish a date for that form to happen before the mayor would make a nomination. If that's what I'm hearing folks say, and it looks like that. I see a lot of folks shaking their head yes. So that's
so
what
this is not in lieu. This was not an idea of being in lieu of an application process. This would have been together with an application.
So this would be, you have to make the application or you don't get to go to the forum. You can be as a public, but you can't be as a candidate. Right? Okay. Yeah, that's what I get. Okay, so do you feel that we have said everything we need to say so that Ms. Kelly can go on and make another stab at drafting this policy with all this input? It feels that way. If anybody has a comment, please speak up so we know.
I will do my best to kind of make that third paragraph more user-friendly. I think it has everything that I need in it, but I'll try to make it so that way the reader can follow it, in a way that's productive as well. And then also we'll eliminate the request that only the mayor disclose the campaign. That was just the way the suggestion came to me, so I'm happy to change that to the candidates will disclose any contribution that they've made to a campaign in Bel Aire. And also the mayor shall share information with the council and the public. That was always available via the open records process, but just to explicitly make that announcement a part of the process, you can do that. I've heard consensus on that. And we will deal with the we talked about the unanimous consent, but I'll find out more about whether that council president in section D is filling the mayor's role for a short term or is in fact takes care of any vacancy that would be created in the mayor's seat. So I feel like we're closer, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy we've gotten some new comments and as things go, you get deeper into things. I think it's coming along. I'm happy to bring this back to workshop or have it for the next council meeting if you feel like you want to go through it again. So either way.
Okay. Councilmember Elsoff, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I still have I take issue with the mayor breaking the tie on the vote. The mayor gets to make the nominee or the nomination, and then he also has the power to break the tie vote, which is a hypothetical, obviously, but that could happen. But I just it seems like it's too. It's biased too much towards the mayor, and if the other council members like that or want that or support that, then I have a question for you, and that is, why don't you just simplify this whole policy to just make the mayor nominate somebody and seat them without us voting? because that's kind of the sentiment I've been getting through these discussions and through how we did things in the last vacancy. I'd like to hear responses to that. Why not just allow the mayor to, if that's where we're going, if that's where the power is leaning, why not just have the policy very simple, where there's no vote, the mayor just plops in his guy? What about that?
Dr. Schroeder, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I wouldn't have voted for just anyone that the mayor nominated in the last time. I wasn't a yes on each of his, so I don't think there's a situation where we.
That's not how you came across. The words you used were not so unsure, and same for Councilman Smith.
I think I publicly said that there were 4 I would say yes for, but then after the people of the community weighed in on it quite heavily for our small community, then I said I wanted to go with John. But prior to that, I was okay with 4 and not okay with 2. And so therefore, I was not going to blanket anything that the mayor suggested. Also, this, if a mayor wanted to put their spouse in, all of us are going to say no to that.
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't know.
Right, maybe not necessarily. You're right. That's not a perfect example, but I'm trying an example. I don't think we'd all say yes to just anyone. So therefore, 3 of the council members being able to say no seems like you're keeping it from him just being able to pick someone totally unqualified, which the rest of us have to then justify why we approve them the next time we go to become elected. So if the mayor puts someone up that's unqualified, the rest of us say it's okay, and that person was totally terrible, we do have to answer for it. So I don't think this is giving carte blanche to the mayor. We're still responsible for being able to tell the mayor no, and I would have said no on a couple of them this last time. So maybe I gave the wrong impression, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
Then join me in repealing the mayor's break the tie vote.
I think that we will cause too many gridlocks. We had it happen this last time. It's happened before. And there's a reason you never have even numbered boards. And so I think having an even numbered board is not the way to go.
Yeah, but it's a vacancy. That's why it's not designed to be an even numbered board. It's a vacancy, right?
Right. So
you are relinquishing voting power to the mayor. And let me be clear. It's not because of Mayor Benaj in particular. I'm talking about any mayor, right? I'm speaking generic. Just to be very clear, I'm not, in case I come off in any way being, I'm not targeting Mr. Mayor Benaj specifically. I'm talking about if it were any mayor. To me, this is an issue of balancing that power between what the council can do and what the mayor can do. And I see this policy just too biased towards the mayor.
Let me give you another perspective on this, if I may. Any motion or even the city council agenda, while Ty does a lot of work in putting that agenda together, the mayor does have a lot of input in that agenda. And I do add things to it that need to be there. So even things that are presented to you needing to meet are issues that the mayor has had input to in some cases. Some cases Ty has done them on his own volition, but that's not in totality. And that is the responsibility of the mayor, according to, as I read the statutes and the policies of the city of Bel Aire. So this is really being consistent with that policy where the mayor makes the nomination and the council decides whether they agree with that nomination or not. They can deny it or they can approve it, just like they can deny or approve any issue that's on the agenda of any council member. So I think this is having the mayor to break the tie is consistent with the same policy that's happened on any motion that we ever consider before council. That's just my 2 cents worth. So, but anyway, any other discussion that we should have on this subject? Hearing none, I think that we've got all kinds of good information for you, Ms. Kelly, that you can redraft the policy. So the question that Ms. Kelly did ask is, we want to bring this policy before council next meeting, or do we want to have it on next workshop? I think we're close enough. We can probably do it at next meeting, but that's your call, whether you want to see it in workshop again. So I'd appreciate input on that. Ms. Kelly? Okay. Not getting any input. I'm going to suggest, Mr. Elsoff, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I guess how soon would we see a final draft of this? If we're going to vote a week from tonight on this, I'd like to see it sooner rather than later.
It'd come out with your packet, and I think your packet comes out on
Thursday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not so many changes that I'm comfortable getting it out by Thursday, by that packet deadline. Whenever you get your packet, it'll be in there, unless you want more time to look at it. But I think some of the other items, I mean, I think the legal issues, I mean, we're close enough where I'm comfortable getting it to you. If somebody has other types of changes, I can work with them one-on-one. Call me this week and we'll get it done.
Okay, I guess I'm interested in hearing from other council members addressing the issue of the mayor voting to break the tie. I'm not really convinced that we ought to do that.
Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all kind of said what we think about that. I know I said that I'm in favor of that. I don't like it constantly, I don't like this high probability of split votes, and I think it does make sense to have the mayor break the tie there. I've said that quite a few times, so.
Thank you. Councilmember Nguyen, do you want to say something?
Yes, I'll restate something, because I did state that I was against that when I was speaking before. And you may have missed it, and that's fine. So I am standing with you. Again, I have the same feelings that you have, that that places a little more power than I really like in that position. So I am standing with you, and will continue. I'm not going to change my mind.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Welch.
Yeah, I'll restate my opinion too, that the mayor should be able to break the tie. If the candidate's not good, you got the right to vote him down three to whatever. So I don't see where, just doing the mayor's choice is anything to even talk about, because that's just not the way it would ever be. That's really giving up all your power, and nobody wants to give up all the power to just the mayor. That wasn't the way our government's set up. So anyway, but if it does come down to a tie, that means you're kind of so-so with the deal, and then it should be up to the mayor to lean it one way or the other.
Thank you. Okay, so it feels like we could have this ready to review at council meeting next Tuesday. And if you can get it out ahead of the packet, that'd be great, but I understand you got work to do, and it's only 2 days before packet, right? So, okay.
Yeah, I'll definitely have it with the packet. If I can get it out sooner, I will, but I'll shoot for that packet deadline.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. I appreciate that. The next item on the agenda is the bylaws of the land bank. And I asked for this to be in here because one of the issues I had, and back to Mr. Elsoff's question about mayor's power, I feel that the mayor has too much power in the land bank. I don't think the mayor is elected. I don't think the public understands that when they elect the mayor, that he gets a different role in voting to buy or sell land in the land bank and additional power, whether these bylaws are written, than he has as mayor. Okay, as mayor, all I can do is break a tie. That's the only time I get to vote, unless it's an ordinance. And then I do vote on ordinances, bylaws, the land bank. The mayor, the chairman, who is the mayor, votes on every issue before the land bank. And so I didn't think that was good policy in governance, because I don't think the public understands that they're electing a person to do that when they vote for a mayor. And I think that we should revisit that. And that's why I've asked this to be brought up. So it's open for discussion. There's really not a proposal out there. Ms. Kelly did bring up and give you a copy of the bylaw of the land bank and gave her a staff report, so you do have that. And several are popping up. Councilmember Smith, if you're first.
I think you've hit on something that's an important discussion topic. I do agree that is inconsistent. It seems inconsistent to me, and it also creates more opportunity for the split votes. Back to the even number of board members problem that we've been discussing on filling the council vacancy. This is creating that exact situation, and I know that within the last couple of years, that's happened at least once, where there was a tie on a very very important decision for our city. And I would certainly, at this point, I think I would support changing those to make it consistent with how we treat the council.
Thank you, Dr. Schroeder.
I also agree we should be consistent there, and I also agree that an even-numbered voting body is, there's a reason we tend to not do that. So I think make it consistent, and having the mayor not vote in the land bank meetings, unless I assume have it work the same way the council does. So if there's one person gone, you have to break a tie or whatever. That's one thing, but I think having it work consistently is makes sense to me.
Thank you, Councilmember Elsaw.
Yeah, it sounds good to me.
So we got three in there that says let's change it. So Councilmember Welch, you're muted. You're still muted.
I know, but I said bad words, so
Oh.
I said I agree. We ought to change it.
All right, very good. Thank you. So, Ms. Kelly, can you make a proposal for us on this issue, and we can talk about it? Maybe next meeting. I don't know if you can do it that quick. Does this have to be an ordinance on this, doesn't it?
Okay, so this would change an ordinance, and I did research to make sure that the statute drives the ordinance, drives the bylaws. So I did research to make sure that there wasn't any statutory requirement that the mayor vote, and there isn't. I mean, the land bank can be made up of a body completely different than the council. Our ordinance makes it up of the actual council members, which is interesting. And that's fine. It's appropriate, because I think Bel Aire has looked at it as an administrative group just to make sure the land is moving from, city possession or property owner. But because it's an ordinance change, I'd want some more time. So it wouldn't be this council, it wouldn't be 2 days from now. I would say like the second meeting in June. That would give me time to just make sure that we're not running into any issues with anything that I'm not seeing that is within the statute, and look at some case law and make sure that we're good with our officers not voting, with at least one officer not voting, because the land bank looks at the group as a group of officers. So if you're comfortable with, I don't know how many decisions the land bank will be making in the next month, but if you're comfortable with just that second meeting in June, I think we can get it cleaned up, and I'd be comfortable with knowing what we have is solid.
So you'd want to go with the meeting on, I think it would be June 17th. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Sure,
I'd want to talk to some other cities that use their land bank a lot more, and definitely look at case law and see how the statutes are going, and making sure that there's no that we're not missing out on any issues or opportunities.
Dr. Soder, did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just saying we should hear from Diane, but then I realized she might have made a physical gesture that I missed, and she had already given her approval. So if she did, I'm sorry. I thought we had missed her, and maybe we hadn't.
Thank you. And Mr. Welch, Councilmember Welch.
There, I unmuted it this time. Just to Jackie's concern, if all the officers have to vote, then should we bring in an additional officer so we actually have an odd number of people on the land bank? And if we do, who would that be? I don't have an answer to that question.
Ms. Kelly, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, you could, PVC has officers from a person from the community, or, I mean, it doesn't set a standard for the status of the officer, like they don't have to be a government official already, but because that's, officers are defined in the ordinance, and that the voting power of officers is in the ordinance, if you wanted to add an officer, we could, since we're already changing the ordinance to allow the mayor to vote, we can make that change as well. So, no comment as to adding an additional officer. You could do it if you want.
I'd only add an additional officer if we find that we can't stop the mayor from voting. If he has to vote, then we need an additional person so we have an odd numbered group.
Okay. Got it.
So if I understand you right, you're suggesting that if she would find in research ordinances that, or state statutes, that she cannot remove the mayor from the voting position, then you're suggesting adding another person to do that.
Correct.
All right.
So that the priority would be to leave the officers as they are and stop them and not have the mayor vote. And then if that didn't work, if and only if that didn't work, then consider recommending the group add another officer.
Right.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Sounds like we have all those. Is there any other issue we need to discuss tonight? If not, I just want to let you know one other item that's kind of come up, just to be aware of. There was another accident at 53rd and Rock this last weekend. Very bad accident. I don't know that anybody was killed, but certainly people were hurt. And this is the second one I know of this year. We had one in February as well. And I've been talking with the city manager and some dialogue with Chief and Ann as well about what we can do about this intersection. And I think the city manager has decided that he's going to investigate doing a traffic study for that intersection and see what the right solution is, rather than just jump off and start throwing things at that intersection and then end up doing something that doesn't make sense. So just so you're aware of it, we are aware of concern with that intersection, and we're going to look at it some more. So, Councilmember Welch, did you just ask to talk, or was this for you?
No, I just asked to talk. I've thought for a long time that should be a four-way stop, just like 45th and Rock. I don't know if that's what you're considering, but I don't know why it would be any less controlled than 45th and Rock.
Yeah.
I've sat there at that intersection trying to cross and had to wait several minutes.
Yeah. And I appreciate that information. So there was another solution that was suggested as well, but I think we'll let the traffic study guide us to what the right answer is, because like I said, I don't want us to go and make a decision and ask 2 months later, why did we do that? So, okay. Very good. So if there's nothing else to discuss, I guess we're dismissed. We'll have a great evening, and we will see you next Tuesday. And we're in council next Tuesday at City Building. That's correct, Mr. Lasher? Okay.
Yes, sir.
No go-to meeting next time. Please show up. They are going to set up social distancing so that we won't be sitting in each other's lap. So, Mr. Welch, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I did. If we were meeting in council chambers tonight, I would not have been able to attend. I wouldn't want you all to catch whatever it is I have. So what, do we want to continue to have a way we can use GoToMeeting with the regular meeting? Or, I'd prefer to be in the council chambers myself, but I don't want to miss a meeting because I don't want to make you guys sick.
Okay, so what we have done in the past, and I have done it myself, is use Skype to come into the meetings. And we've done that with individuals before. Just Councilmember Smith has done that as well. So I think we can make accommodations for that. And Mr. Henry, did you have something you wanted to say, or are you just confirming yes, you want to be?
No, yeah, we can set a laptop up. That's the easiest way to do it, like you've done it in the past, Mayor Bernard.
Very good, thank you. And Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I was just going to comment. I think that works really well so long as it's only one council member. If at any point you have two council members that are, having COVID symptoms or symptoms which we want to be, staying home out of an abundance of caution given the current situation, I think that the remote meeting becomes significantly less effective because council member number one on the laptop likely can't hear or see council member two on the separate laptop. And so if we get into that type of situation, in my opinion, we almost have to revert back to everyone being on the GoToMeeting, even if that's just everyone in different rooms at City Hall in order to facilitate communication. I don't know that you can effectively have more than one person calling in.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and we tried that early on when we started this COVID thing, and it was a bit awkward. And I think the folks that remote, it was more awkward for them than it was for those of us that were in City Hall. But it was awkward. So I agree with those. So if we learn that's the case, as soon as you know that you think that you're not going to be able to make that meeting, please let us know so that we can make a decision what we do earlier than later. Okay. Very good. Nothing else. Everybody have a great evening and great weekend, and we will see you next Tuesday. Take care.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.